£12.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips, in Leeds it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce.
You can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12.60. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was it was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 6. The sun is not yet up, but don't worry, we are, because we are here to bring you every single cough and spit of what is going on in the front pages of the newspapers and, of course, whatever happens over the course of the next 24 hours before we are back here on Wednesday morning. Peter Blexley joins me. Very good morning to see you. Good to see you, Peter. We've got lots to talk about, including, of course, the Trump tariffs, the crashing of the markets, you know, the destruction of your pension fund and all of that. My message to you is don't panic. His message is don't be a panican. And they've put a star next to that, a new party based on weak and stupid people criticising Donald Trump's tariff agenda. So just calm down. Julie Hartley-Brewer's been getting her knickers in a twist for about a week now about how terrible it all is for your pension and how terrible it all is for the economy and how we're all going to suffer. Well, you know what? We're not actually going to suffer. You know, there might be some short-term pain, but already we are seeing signs that actually what Donald Trump wants to happen is beginning to happen. Lots of countries are dropping all their tariffs. Lots of countries are wanting to invest in America. Lots of countries are seeing their economies actually growing rather than shrinking. So let's wait and see, which is what I always say, and we'll tell you what it's like in a little while. Front page of the Daily Mail, they brought up the couple who have had an incredible first. It's like a baby born after a womb transplant in the UK. It's the first time it's ever happened. British mother hails healthy daughter as her greatest gift, thanks to her sister, who's 42 years old, who's donated her uterus to her. It's a lovely story, makes you feel all warm and fuzzy, and until you get to the paragraph where it says, and it was all done on the NHS. Hang on a minute, we haven't got any money. We haven't got any possibility of getting served. A friend of mine just rang me yesterday to say that they had to go to A&E. Their elderly father had a nosebleed that wouldn't stop bleeding. They took him to the A&E. He sat there for 5 hours with his nose bleeding because they couldn't see anybody. And they were told, you're lucky that we saw you within 5 hours. Why are we giving away womb transplants? That's the front page of the Daily Mail. I'm very happy for them. It's a very nice story. I'm sure the Daily Mail will think it's heartwarming. You might think it's heartwarming. Peter might think it's heartwarming. But we haven't got the money. You know, if you want to get a womb transplant, get it done privately. Thank you very much indeed. 0344 499 1000 is the number. We're going to have more bin strikes, apparently. Unite Union has said, forget about Birmingham. We're going to hit Liverpool. We're going to hit Leeds. We're going to hit Glasgow. We're going to hit London, because they've fed up with the local councils and the amount of money they're being paid. We've got a police chief who's quit over 2 affairs. I shall be asking Peter about that. He knows the ins and outs of what's going on. We've also got an incredible story that Robert Jenrick actually uncovered a couple of days ago, which is that our prison system is overrun by Islamists. The Muslim Brotherhood and gangs of Muslims are taking over the prisons in this country, and it is not a good thing. I'm Mike Graham. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Welcome to Morning Glory. Coming up to 6 minutes past 6. Peter Blexley's here. Peter, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Governor.
I don't know whether you're taking a pension at the moment. If you are, you're probably not very happy with the way that it's losing money. But all the people that I talk to, including some pension advisors and some financial advisors, say, look, if you can sit this one out, you'll be fine. You know, as ever, if you look at the long term over the last 5 years, I put a tweet out yesterday, context is everything. If you look at the last 5 years, you've got the FTSE going like that, and then just because it gets to where we are now, it goes like that. A little dip, which is nothing more than a little dip. And everybody who doesn't know anything about markets panics and starts talking about selling their stock. But actually, some people are saying to me, actually, it's a good time to buy. It's a good time to buy stock. If you've got a pension fund, and I know many of you listening to this won't have one, but if you have got one and you've got a pension advisor, they will tell you, buy some stock.
Well, of course, my knowledge of economics can, of course, be written on the back of a postage stamp.
Well, you and Rachel Reeves.
In longhand,
yes.
Yeah. So I'm probably the least qualified person on the planet to espouse anything about stock markets, tariffs and the such like. But what I do believe in most firmly, and let's face it, Starmer is saying the same, I think now is not a time of panic.
No, of course not.
I think let things settle down.
Yeah.
When we have noises coming out of Europe, like Ursula von der Leyen saying or suggesting, well, let's just get rid of tariffs.
Yeah.
Let's have tariff-free trade.
Trump's already won that battle then, hasn't he? Because this is an organisation which is the most tariff-driven and most protectionist organisation in the world, right? The EU doesn't like any other countries who are not in the EU, and they've been putting tariffs on them for years. Now suddenly they're going, oh, maybe we'll take them off.
So part of my ignorance, but if we had tariff-free trade with many of our trading partners, then surely prices would come down.
Quite right.
And wouldn't that be a good thing?
It would.
If we went round a supermarket.
And guess what Giorgia Meloni's now beginning to say, who's the Italian Prime Minister, who's more sympathetic to Trump perhaps than most European leaders. She's actually saying they're not called tariffs, but some of the net zero targets that we have been given by the European Union, which means that we have to charge more money for things, for like electricity and energy and all of that, is actually the same as a tariff, and let's get rid of those too. And she's going over to see Trump in the next week.
Yeah, and look at Moribund Miliband.
Oh,
right?
Moribund Miliband, great name for him.
I mean, really, it's just absolutely shocking. I think many commentators, some from varying sides of the political spectrum, are actually waking up and saying we've got energy which is 100% more expensive than America's, 50% more expensive than France, and much of it is being driven by green levies, green taxes, all with this kind of manic target of net zero. Why don't we relax these a little bit? Why perhaps now might be the time to ease some of these taxes, abolish them and the restrictions.
I was talking to my sister yesterday, who lives in America, and her nephew, my son, who lives in California, and the petrol prices over there are about 70p a litre. Yeah. And even they think that's expensive, and they're going, why can't it be cheaper? And I'm going to try filling it up over here.
But of course, the energy that all our factories and businesses use, imagine if the cost of that electricity comes down.
Imagine.
They could potentially pass on savings to us.
Imagine if we didn't have a net zero target that enabled us to put a tariff, effectively, on our electricity bill, because that's what it is. And I'm going to start talking about that, because that's what Giorgia Meloni thinks it is. You know, the extra sort of fee that you pay every single month in your electricity bill, because it's a tariff for net zero, is a bleeding tariff. I don't care what you call it.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, everything is expensive. Every single thing is expensive. I'll throw out a challenge, listeners and viewers. What isn't expensive these days?
What's gone down in price?
I can't find anything that isn't expensive.
There's nothing that's gone down in price. No. Everything has gone up in price. And it's all down to, I mean, Julia was saying yesterday, and what I hate is the idea that Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves are going to now claim when they get to the autumn, oh, the reason everything's so bad is because of the world events that have happened and the fact that Donald Trump has done. But by then, I think the economy in the world will have righted itself. China's upset. Good. I'm glad they're upset. China is saying that the Americans are bullying them. Good. I say again, you know, let's bully the Chinese. Let's bully them out of existence. Let's bully them out of every single country in this world which they have absolutely and utterly colonised. Let's bully them out of Africa. Let's bully them out of South America. And let's bully them out of Britain and America. because who needs China? You know, let's say enough is enough. You stop using slaves and we'll stop buying all of your crappy goods. How about that?
If you need a new cable for your phone, for example, look at that box and see where it's manufactured. You know, if you need a part for your car, take a close look, see where it might have been manufactured. If you need a car,
don't buy one from China.
Yeah,
just don't do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and for China to lose some of its domination, I think would be a good thing if it reflected itself in lower prices for us.
Yeah.
Lower energy, lower prices at the till, happier British public.
Exactly right. Because we know, you and I have been around long enough to know that the governments of this country have stewarded us in an economic way like blind men in a dark room. They literally haven't done anything good for us.
Slaves.
So if Donald Trump is shaking up the world's economy, making people understand that, you know, there is a different way and there is a better way, and maybe there's a way that the ordinary people of every country in the world can actually benefit from it, then I say, let's get it on. Let's do it.
From Blair onwards, what have all our prime ministers been? Slaves to globalisation.
Slaves to globalisation.
Absolute
Let's give money away that we don't have to countries all around the world. Let's give some money to Yemen. Let's give some money to India. Let's give some money to, you know, Indonesia. Let's give some money to the Faroe Islands. Let's just keep giving our money away that we pay our hard-earned taxes for, and let's not bother helping people in Britain who actually need the money.
Let's all be part of this great big global trading scheme, scam, call it what you will, and consequently we suffer. Manufacturing driven into the ground. What do we manufacture? What do we make? Nowhere near as much as we could. Think of the benefits to our economy we could bring if we reinvented our manufacturing
Donald
base.
Trump is showing the way to the Western European leaders who have done the square root of bugger all, quite frankly, over the last 20 to 30 years. And all they've done is drive us further into this kind of, you know, dead end of European, you know, subsidy, you know, help. Let's give more money to the poorer countries. Enough already. Let's have a look at what Keir Starmer tweeted yesterday.
My message to you today is simple. We are going to back you to the hilt. This is a moment for cool heads. Nobody wins from a trade war. You know that. But it's also a moment for urgency, because we've got to rise together as a nation to the great challenge of our age, and it is the great challenge, which is to renew Britain so we're secure in this era of global instability. You are making cars here, but you're also representing our country with each car as it departs. This is a government of industrial renewal, because my choice in this volatile world is to back British brilliance.
This is a guy who had no idea he was going to do this 9 months ago, right? He's only doing it because he's sucking up to Donald Trump, and he's gone, ooh, I better do what Donald Trump wants because, you know, I'm basically, you know, his creature now. And I don't remember anything about industrial renewal in the manifesto. Do you?
Not a word.
Funny that.
And of course, only a day or two before that speech, he said the age of globalisation is over.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
That's what they were selling on Sunday, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That idiot Darren Jones on, you know, old Rachel Reeves' deputy, who they put out just because he's not as stupid as she is, and they think he looks kind of, you know, relatively respectable. But let's have a look at old Rach, you know, the economist. This is what she had to say at Jaguar Land Rover yesterday.
Jaguar Land Rover, you don't need me to tell you, is an iconic British brand and company. It's got a proud history, and there are huge opportunities despite the challenges that we face for the future. When it comes to high-quality design and engineering, you, all of you, are gold standard. The skill, the expertise that Keir and I have seen here today demonstrate why that is. Proud British company owned by some Indians, first of all, so you got that wrong. And actually, if you've ever owned a Jaguar or a Land Rover, you will know that it is not a gold standard car. They break down a lot, and the service, I'm afraid, is not particularly good.
Yeah, I've never owned
And they
one.
charge you an absolute fortune. I've owned a Jaguar and I've owned a Range Rover, and without any question or shadow of a doubt, they are some of the worst mechanically made cars in the world. They work very well for a while, and then they break down all the time.
Well, round my manor, which recently has been the Metropolitan Police hotspot for vehicle crime, a lot of people used to own Range Rovers,
and they all get nicked.
And they came downstairs in the morning to find they weren't there anymore.
They're very popular in Russia, So if you do own one, it will get nicked and driven over to Russia and sold to Russians because they can't buy them on the grounds that they've been sanctioned. But don't worry, if you go to Moscow, you'll see plenty of Range Rovers being driven around.
Yeah.
But, I mean, what it is not, it used to be a great, iconic British brand, but it's owned by an Indian organisation. It's no longer a British brand. So the fact that the Chancellor doesn't know that probably doesn't come as any great surprise to you, and certainly doesn't come as a great surprise to me.
I'm not...
It's like saying Ford, what a great British company. No, it's not. It's owned by Americans.
Yeah, I'm not sure that Rachel Reeves is one for detail.
She's not good, is she, on detail?
No, I don't think it's necessarily her strong point. And of course,
all she has to do is Google it, where it says Jaguar Land Rover is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Indian company Tata Motors.
Yeah, there you go.
Tata, Rachel.
Yeah, Tata, who sponsor the Indian Premier League. Now, there's an Indian product I am interested in.
Yes.
A bit of cricket. Anyway, she really, I think, she kind of gives me the impression that a lot of things pass her by.
Yes.
I mean, she calls herself an economist.
Yeah.
And I think from what I've learned from my son, who studied economics as part of his degree, which he recently graduated from, is that just about every economist in the world is fundamentally and always wrong.
Yeah.
Because it's an imprecise science.
Of course it is.
So much of it is guesswork.
Economics isn't science. You know, I studied economics at university, right? I didn't finish the degree, partly because as I did the first couple of years, I thought, this is cobblers. And I used to keep saying to my economics lecturers, I said, the problem with you is that all of this is based on an assumption. And if you do away with the original assumption, none of it matters. You know, you're basically telling me that if this happens, then that will happen. But what if this doesn't happen? What do you do then?
It is the study of if, buts and maybes. That's what it is, fundamentally.
Yeah.
If this happens, well, that might happen, and but, and maybe, and...
It's like predicting the weather. You might as well go to the Met Office and go, what's the weather doing? Have a look out the window. They go, oh, no, you don't want to do that. Here's what you want to do. You want to check these graphs that we've got here, which says that at 12 o'clock it's going to start raining.
That cost millions.
And here's a big red map to show you how scarily red and hot the country is going to be.
Yeah.
And, you know, yesterday we were told it was going to be absolutely roasting, and there was a cold wind that blew through London, and it was not actually that warm at all.
There's a chill wind that blows, Mike.
Now, listen, Alan in Middlesbrough is a man after my own heart. He says this, you were correct, and I was with you telling people not to panic over the financial markets. Overnight, Asian stock markets have risen by 6%, which means no doubt that the FTSE will surge today. I wonder if Trump will get praised later on today. Julia will be happy later. Yeah, well, see, this is the problem. You know, stock markets go down, people make money. Stock markets go up, people make money. That's how they make money, right? The idea that people are so ignorant about that, who are otherwise quite intelligent, and I'm not suggesting that Julia's not intelligent, but, you know, the point is that you panic at your own peril, and you start selling things off, and you start, you know, going, oh, my God, what am I going to do? My pension's all going down the gurgler. And if you're actually drawing a pension right now, and you have a private pension, yes, it's probably a little bit disturbing, but it will come back, and it will probably come back in the course of the next 7 days.
My narrow understanding of these matters tells me that it's really a case of, do you back the right horse or not? Are you going to back them to go up or back them to go down?
Well, if you want to back horses,
you can make money.
This is the place to be for backing horses. You know, we picked the Grand National winner on Friday, thanks to Lizzie Clark, former jockey, now TalkSport commentator. You know, Nick Rockett, absolutely 33-1 winner. I won it, and so did many others who were listening to the show. And I'm sorry you weren't one of them, Peter, because I'd like to have given you the tip. But, you know, if you haven't got your ears on the old, you know, Morning Glory show, you're missing out.
I've only got myself to blame.
You have. Absolutely right. Now, Jason in Worthing also agrees with me. He says, this womb transfer is wonderful news. However, it should not have been done through the NHS. We pay to go privately for IVF, and it worked for us after 7 attempts, and it was money well spent. But with this womb transfer being paid by the taxpayer, this could open the door for transgender men who want it done to the taxpayer's expense. Well, that's a good point, isn't it? What if you, as a transgender man, decide that you want to give birth, right? And so you get a womb transfer. It sounds like something that Premier League does on, you know, last day of the transfer market, you know, January 31st or whatever it is. I'm not comfortable with the public paying for this, are you?
That is the very point I was going to raise.
Yeah.
I fear this morning there will be a number of blokes with big beards called Trevor,
right?
Who, as they are putting on their makeup and squeezing into their size 20 frocks to go to work, right, horrible woman.
In the NHS, usually.
Yeah.
There's a bloke I used to see actually walking to Guy's Hospital every morning who was about 6'4", wore a dress, didn't even put tights on. I was like, put some tights on, your legs are hairy. You know, do yourself a favour, mate. You could look better.
Yeah. So there they might be, that very person, swanning down the road with kit a dangling and saying to themselves, this is open doors.
You're not being transphobic here, are you? You're just telling the truth.
No, because there are blokes in frocks.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it.
And they're just going to say, you know, this is open the door to me. I think
fancy a womb transfer. I've transferred my money before. Why can't I just transfer a womb?
Oi, doc.
Yeah, and you can't. You should be able to do it on the NHS. You know, the NHS hasn't got any money, right? Yesterday, we were talking about, and we're going to talk about it today as well, this idea that they're going to send people around to your house, you know, knocking on the door, don't ring the bell, whatever you do. We got in a lot of trouble with this yesterday. Rang the doorbell, lots of people's dogs went mad, and they were like, stop ringing the doorbell. And people are going to come around and go, how are you feeling? You all right? Yeah, they're not actually, you haven't called them, they're just knocking on the door to see if you need any NHS assistance. Right. I don't think that's a good idea.
Well, Trev might be waiting for that knock this morning, mightn't
he? Well, he might well be, you know, because he should be coming to work because it's a Tuesday. Yeah. He doesn't work on a Monday, doesn't like going to work on a Monday, but there we are. Now, coming up, you're a football fan. I'm going to ask you about Jack Grealish. He's on the front page of The Sun. Apparently he got slapped in the face last night by a Man United fan. I'm surprised it wasn't a Man City fan, actually, because that's who he plays for, and they might have been more keen to do it, but we'll come back to that. Have we got a little voice note before we go? Have a listen.
Hi, Richard in Corby. Starmer sounds like a boring vicar delivering a sermon on a Sunday morning. I was expecting him to finish with, don't forget to bring in Marcel next Saturday morning in the village hall. Absolutely dreadful.
He really is. He's the most useless Prime Minister I think I've ever seen in my lifetime. I'm sorry to say that. I'd like to think he's great. People say we should all be hoping that Keir Starmer is a successful Prime Minister. Well, maybe, but I just know that he's never going to be that man, I'm afraid. 6:22, I'm Mike Graham, Peter Blexley's here. We've got lots more to do. We need to help hear from you as well, of course. Give us your voice notes, give us your text messages to 87222. You can tweet us at talkTV. This is Morning Glory.
The sheer number of petty criminals, thieves, mobile phone thefts, all that sort of thing, the sheer number of people who commit crimes almost every day and simply don't get sentences of this long. Real bread and butter stuff, the stuff that you learn when you're in primary school or when you're a toddler. You don't take things that don't belong to you, you don't break things that don't belong to you, you don't attack people for no good reason, often not even for a good reason. Those people are the ones that are not going to prison at all. But as you say, somebody who sent a tweet, well, an example must be made of that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. It's 6:25 and it is, of course, the one place to be for the home of common sense. If you haven't had your bumper sticker yet, it will be arriving in the post. And if you don't get part of this batch, you'll get part of the next batch. I know lots of you are saying, but I applied for one the first day that you asked, and I know that many of you did that. But the problem is that the, what can only be described as the administration department of Talk sort of went through the whole list, and they're still working through it. So they haven't done it in any particular order necessarily, but you will, if you've asked for one, you will get one. I got a degree in economics 50 plus years ago, says Bill in Cheshire. My professor always used to tell us it's not a science. If you lined up all the economists in the world, they would still never reach a conclusion. Absolutely right. Nothing has changed. Exactly. And you keep seeing all these bozos on television, particularly on the BBC, saying, but almost every economist in the world is saying that Donald Trump is going to ruin the world's economy. Oh, really? Well, have a look at what Ursula von der Leyen said yesterday.
We stand ready to negotiate with the United States. Indeed, we have offered 0 for 0 tariffs for industrial goods, as we have successfully done with many other trading partners, because Europe is always ready for a good deal, so we keep it on the table. But we are also prepared to respond through countermeasures and defend our interests.
So there she is, after the EU said that they were going to start putting even bigger tariffs on Trump, they were going to retaliate. She's now saying, actually, we'll go 0 for 0, which is exactly what he wants.
How many times did you and I sit here, Mike, talking about Trump, should he be elected, and then after he got elected saying he now stands across the political landscape as a global giant. Yes. Because he's got the House of Representatives, the Senate, the Supreme Court virtually. He's an unstoppable force, and he's going to do what he wants to do.
And also what he is doing, regardless of the people who hate him, and regardless of people who are very critical of everything that he does, he is a success, and it's proving to be a success. And for people to sort of grasp at the ridiculousness of the way the markets are reacting, these are the same people who went, oh, but the market's killed off Liz Truss. That's not good. Even right-wingers in this country are going, oh, hang on, the markets are killing off Donald Trump. Well, they're not actually. They're just making money. They're doing what they do.
And look what happened to the markets in the States yesterday. When somebody went on telly and said there is an option of a 90-day suspension, and they completely misinterpreted that man saying there's an option. They thought it was going to be invoked, so suddenly the market peaks again. These people... they're not
the markets.
No,
the markets are not a reliable source of whether or not the economy is doing well. They're not a reliable source of whether the country has got any faith in any particular government, and not least because the FTSE 100, for example, is not even a British stock market. It's full of international global companies, who are traded every single day in all sorts of different ways by people around the world. It's not, it's not a reflection of the British economy. That's simple. Let's talk about more tariffs being dropped. Here's Benjamin Netanyahu, who went to the Oval Office yesterday to meet the president.
First, if I can mention tariffs, it's a subject of some interest today. I can tell you that I said to the president a very simple thing. We will eliminate the trade deficit with the United States. We intend to do it very quickly. We think it's the right thing to do. And we're going to also eliminate trade barriers, a variety of trade barriers that have been put up unnecessarily. And I think Israel can serve as a model for many countries who ought to do the same.
So they get rid of their tariffs as well. Another victory for Trump.
And barriers to trade. There you go, right?
I know. Extraordinary. Let's turn our fate to football. The City derby up in Manchester was last night. I saw Phil Neville having a go. I didn't see the game, but he was complaining that it was completely sort of listless, not very energetic, not particularly nasty. You want derbies to be, you being a QPR man, want to see QPR playing Fulham with a bit of, crunching tackles going in. There was none of that, apparently. But Jack Grealish, one of the great stars of Manchester City and England, was slapped as he walked towards the tunnel, and police have arrested a 20-year-old and said he's going to appear in court in July.
Yes, so I'll be very careful around the events of last night, but of course Mr Grealish had the huge misfortune to be assaulted once before on a football pitch. I think it was 2019 when he was playing for Aston Villa. And there's a message here for numbskull football idiots, idiots full stop really, who choose to encroach upon the pitch or the surrounding areas. It is not for you.
Right.
You've bought a seat, or if you're in a rail standing bit, you've bought a spot to stand in. Stay there. Go into the ground, watch the game, go out of the ground, express your dissatisfaction, shout, chant, sing, do what you want within the bounds of the law, but do not encroach upon the pitch and its surrounding
and certainly
areas.
Don't touch the players. You and I have had this conversation before. See, I'm one of those rather boring characters who I don't enjoy some of the chants that are made at football. We saw that there was some chants made at Phil Foden about his mum, which apparently were said to be, you know, rather distasteful apart from anything else. And I know that you would defend them just because you say freedom of speech, you know, you're a football fan, you pay your money, you can sing whatever you like. I wonder if that sort of behaviour, though, leads idiots to do this kind of thing, because it leads you to think that you've got no respect for the players, you don't give them any quarter at all, and so what's the difference if you're going to abuse their mother or slap them in the face?
It's a quantum leap from singing a derogatory song about a player's mum to going on a pitch and assaulting a player. There's a whole different, you know, huge gap between those two. And yes, freedom of speech, of course. If it's within the law, you can be as distasteful as you like at a football match, and that's part of the attraction for people like me. And there's been some very,
listen, I'm not going to criticise. I'm not going to criticise you for it, because there have been terrible chants, and it's one of those things for me. Perhaps you might accuse me of being sort of a bit of a middle class dropout or something. You know, I just think it's a bit distasteful, and I just wonder whether people who are a bit stupid think that that gives them the right to then go the next step.
No, I think, and I hope that should this person be convicted, then I would hope that a suitable punishment would be handed down. Let those players ply their trade, show us their skills, entertain us, albeit I don't think there was a lot of entertainment in last night's game.
It was pretty dull. It was 0-0 draw, wasn't it?
Well, I saw the worst 0-0 draw you've ever seen on Saturday. Both teams were so bad they both deserved to lose.
Right.
It was dreadful. QPR versus Cardiff. Right. Oh, my word. In all the years and all the thousands of games of football I've watched, that was fundamentally the worst ever. But anyway, moving on and cheering myself up. Yeah. Stay off the pitch, stay off the surrounds of the pitch. Just stick where you're supposed to be and behave yourself.
And as is the inevitable advice that I've always given to all of my children, don't be an idiot, basically. I sometimes use a different word, but, you know, it's like, just don't be an idiot, and your life will be a lot simpler. 6:33, this from Elle in Wales. Morning, Mike. I'm with you. I'm sick of the panic that's being stirred by the mainstream media about the tariffs. Trump knows what he's doing. Sod China. They have dominated for way too long. It's time to put them back in the box and stop selling us all your bloody rubbish. We've had enough. Well, I said this at the top of the show, and I said it yesterday. You know, if China aren't happy, well, good. If they're complaining that they're being bullied by America, excellent. You know, bring it on. Bully them some more. You know, push them back across the divide where they've taken all the mineral rights out of Africa, taken all the mineral rights out of South America, gone into Afghanistan and taken all the lithium mines. You know, China is an aggressive, nasty, horrible state which is run like a dictatorship by people who think it's okay to kill their own citizens if they don't agree with them. I don't see why we should be pandering to them in any way, shape or form.
It's an appalling totalitarian state.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely dreadful.
I'm glad they're feeling bullied. Good.
And it is metaphorically raping and pillaging its way through Africa, stealing all of the valuable minerals and other products that it can gouge out of the ground, leaving Africa still as impoverished as it ever was.
Yes.
And when I was down in Botswana just recently, I was talking to a former senior police chief who had played a large part in getting drones purchased by the Botswana police. Not before time, very important law enforcement tactic. But he hung his head as he said, they only went and bought the Chinese ones.
Yeah, right.
Now, you imagine what those Chinese drones are doing when Botswana
collecting
police,
a lot of data,
in their naivety, think that they're pursuing their own criminals. You can imagine that it's hoovering up all the data about the landscape, picking it all the way back to Beijing, and they're going, right, what else can we find in the ground to go and rip out of there.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. Lots of you are giving me some very interesting takes on the whole womb transplant story. Front page of the Daily Mail is to say a British woman has had a healthy baby girl after her sister's womb was transplanted into her in a UK first. Lots of you agreeing with me. This should not be being paid for by the UK taxpayer and should not be being provided as a service by the NHS. And one here from Taz who says, "Good morning, Mike. I'm so far 5 hours in A&E in Eastbourne. The board currently says the wait time is 12 hours. Maybe we should do a few less womb transplants and actually transplant a few bleeding doctors into the A&E so that people can actually be seen inside of half a day. Any chance of that, do you think, Mr. Wedge Streeting? 6:35.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:38. A funny story in The Sun, actually, about football fans. Some American tourist apparently got on the wrong boat when he came to London. He decided he wanted to go on a sightseeing tour down the River Thames, and unfortunately for him, he got on the wrong boat, which was full of Southend United supporters heading to a match, and it was basically a boozy trip down the river, where they basically grabbed him. He was a student, aged 21, American bloke by the name of Evan Johnson. But the Shrimpers welcomed him, that's what they're known as, and sang songs to him, including "Evan is a Shrimper," la 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 la. I don't think he quite knew what had hit him, but I think he had quite a good time. Some pictures of him with some of the football fans is quite amusing. You know,
smiling and enjoying himself.
The upside of football, right?
Yeah, wonderful, without a doubt. Yeah, and he clearly had an experience that will live long in the memory. And fair play to the Southend United fans. Do you know what? We get a bad press, football fans, but most of us have got a real sense of humour. We're used to defeat. You know, when you support a club like Southend, who recently got relegated out of the Football League, you know, they're a non-league side, I'm sure now they are.
Well, proper football fans say it's not about whether you win or lose, it's about who you watch the game with.
Being with your mates.
Being with your mates on a Saturday afternoon.
My mate that I sit with, we've been going to Rangers together for 35 years, home and away, win, lose or draw.
Yeah, and mostly lose.
And we've got the greatest friendship imaginable.
Yeah.
And it's
a day out, isn't it?
We go with.
And you go up and down the country.
Yeah. And we sit on a train and there's four of us, and sometimes my boys come when they're around, you know, and my son's boys who are now like young adults.
Yeah.
And of course we've seen them since they were babies. We've watched each other's kids since they were babies. And we all go and we have a great time, and the fun and laughter is just a joy.
Yeah. It is. It's a great British institution, actually, it has to be said.
Yeah.
And I say British because it includes Scotland, even though they've got a bit of a sectarian problem with Celtic and Rangers. But no, I mean, it's a great thing. Let's move on to something slightly more serious, because this is a small story in The Sun, but I think it's a big story, and it should be talked about in much, much bigger terms over the course of the next few days and weeks. Public inquiry into what went wrong into the lead-up to the Southport stabbings began its work yesterday. It will look into any potential failings by public organisations dealing with Axel Ruda-Cabana before he launched his deadly attacks when aged 17. We already know that Prevent, the organisation that was supposed to have stopped this kind of activity, have been absolutely hauled over the coals. You know, I had a big argument with Lord Carlisle, who was the sort of Prevent, what you might call sort of re-educator, and he kept telling me, well, Prevent does what it says on the tin. We don't catch everybody, but we do a pretty good job. Well, it turns out, no, they don't. They do a really bad job. What's your take on this?
Well, I'm very interested to know what the terms of reference are for this inquiry.
Right.
They're going to say events that led up to Ruda-Cabana's murderous rampage. Yes, it's going to be very interesting as to what exactly it's going to encompass. I particularly am interested in when did they know that the ricin had been found?
Yes.
You know, so when did it start getting flagged up to the security services, the counter-terrorism police, and in turn the Prime Minister? Very, very rapidly, I would have thought.
Right.
And of course, everybody in the establishment still maintains it was not terror-related.
Yeah.
Right? Something which I would
even though he
take
was actually
issue with.
charged with a terror offence.
Yeah.
Which is sort of baffling to most ordinary British-speaking people.
Yes, indeed, absolutely. Anyway, this inquiry is chaired by Sir Adrian Fulford. He's the judge who sentenced Wayne Couzens, that appalling murderer of Sarah Everard, and I hope that he conducts a very robust inquiry and gets the answers that people deserve. No, most of all, of course, the victims and the surviving parents. It is so ghastly what he did, and so truly appalling that we must never forget, and we must do everything we possibly can to stop a repeat of it.
Yeah, absolutely right. And much will be done about, you know, what would have happened before he actually committed the crime. But as you're quite rightly saying, we should also we need to know what happened after he committed the crime, and how soon was the information that was withheld from the public made public, and should it not have been made public earlier?
Yeah, and with regards to what happened before he offended, I think we live in an increasingly kind of woke world where people that are in positions are actually afraid to act sometimes and afraid to say the blatantly obvious for fear of being branded some kind of phobic or ist or something. You know, I think there's a malaise.
Yeah, only yesterday we were talking about the case of Lucy Connolly, a woman who, you know, put out a very stupid tweet, and everybody regards it as stupid, but in the heat of the moment, under intense pressure from things that had happened in her private life, she gets sentenced to 31 months in prison. And only this weekend we learned that she was actually refused the right to go and see her children, refused the right to go and see her family, and now even Liz Truss, former Prime Minister, has said, you know, let this woman go. She's done enough time. She's been in prison for, what, 9 months practically? Yeah. You know, just let her out.
It was a vile
Just let
tweet.
her out.
It was a vile tweet, which clearly deserved a degree of punishment. But I think that 31 months was excessive. And when you think that people like Hugh Edwards never did a day in jail, and many other revolting, disgusting paedophiles who share images of the most serious kind of child sex abuse, and they, in their droves, are not going to jail, you kind of think, is Lucy Connolly really a kind of political prisoner now?
I know. You do. You get, and also that's what people start to think, and it doesn't help the general good of the nation for people to believe that there is a two-tier justice system, of which there is. There is no question about that. Speaking of which, let's talk about the Chief Constable of Hampshire Constabulary, who's done quite an amazing thing. He's quit the force amid an investigation into not one, but two alleged relationship with colleagues.
Chief Constable of Hampshire, as was, until the other day, Mr. Scott Chilton.
Yes.
33 years in the police, so he could retire with his pension, all intact, and all of that. And as a Chief Constable, it'll be a whopping great pension, that I can tell you. He had a problem with what we used to say in policing in terms of keeping it in his trousers.
Yes.
Allegedly.
That would be good.
Yes.
Yeah.
He seemed to be rather fond of people of the opposite sex.
Yeah.
And consequently, there are a couple of investigations into his behaviour. Well, he got notified of a new inquiry alleging gross misconduct. And as soon as he was notified of that, he went, right, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
So that he cops his pension and all that kind of thing.
Right.
And off he goes. He is a man, of course, that won't be familiar to anybody listening or watching this show.
Yeah.
Because like so many senior police officers these days, they rise without trace.
Yes.
But they
They
manage to
certainly
say
do.
the right things, get promoted by spreadsheets, and that's what you get.
And the story only came to light because of a previous misconduct hearing involving a DCI, Detective Chief Inspector Roger Wood, who was accused of having sex with junior colleagues. And he said, by way of sort of justification for what he did, well, the Chief Constable had an affair as well.
Yeah.
You know, it sounds like a real hotbed of soap opera-like activity in the Hampshire Constabulary. I wonder what their crime figures are actually like. Have they spent any time actually solving any crime, or are they all just, you know, shagging each other?
Well, I have to admit that once upon a time, and I'm going to use that word again now because you did slightly different variation of it. I gave an interview to the Daily Star.
Oh, yeah.
And I was telling them about Scotland Yard back in the 1980s.
Yes.
And I was quoted as describing it as a shagger's paradise. And it's fair to say...
This message time at 6:46. Listen, if you're up already, you know, your kids are probably still asleep. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
My apologies.
And mine as well.
Yeah.
But, yes, we were a pretty promiscuous bunch. It was all consensual.
Yeah, but you actually arrested people in those days as well.
Oh, lots of
Whereas
people.
now they don't bother arresting anyone.
Lots and lots of people.
Yeah.
And that's why we so often went to the pub to celebrate in the
Of
evening.
course.
We would be joined by a lot of the admin staff and all that kind of stuff, and they would join in because they played an important part in helping us.
Indeed.
And things would happen.
Yeah. Listen, those were the days when people went to work and actually enjoyed it, wanted to go to the office for lots of reasons, because the work was fun, you know, the afters were fun, and actually the world was a better place. And guess what? The economy was actually doing better than it is now.
Oh, it was a much more joyous place.
Yes,
it really was.
I can absolutely. The same goes for Fleet Street. Fleet Street was a joy. You know, it was mad. It was crazy. You were working all the time. You were sort of doing 12-hour days. But you know, we worked hard. We played hard. It was brilliant. You know, when I read now that Gen Z don't want to go to work and they're too frightened to answer the phone and they don't want to send, you know, any sort of email to anybody in case they get a nasty reply, I just think to myself, oh my God, just go to an office, enjoy yourself, become a human being, and just get on with it. You know?
And they're not drinking.
Oh no, apparently
the
champagne sales have gone down because they've stopped drinking champagne.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
I mean, one of life's joys.
I know.
Expensive, but
Let's get a voice note from Andy.
Morning, Mike. Andy in Southsea. On this womb transplant story, I just can't get it around my head that, you know, things like this are actually getting done with on the NHS. It really does beg a belief. I just can't understand it at all. I mean, where they're going to send them for a recovery, Lake Windermere or something, with a nice posh hotel, and she can have a womb with a view then too. Keep up the good work, Mike.
Yeah, very good, Andy. Thank you. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think the problem is that, you know, everybody likes these stories. It's a very happy story. A couple who wanted to have a baby who couldn't, you know, she gets a donated womb from her sister. You know, it all seems very cosy and all very nice, and everybody can stroke themselves on the back and go, you know, it's a feel-good story. But it's not a feel-good story if the taxpayer, in my view, is paying for it.
And, of course, it will open the door, I'm sure, to many, many other childless women, perhaps, wanting to go through the same treatment.
And as you say, maybe not just childless women, but, you know, trans women who think that it's time they had a womb transplanted into them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the worry, isn't it? I mean, that's suddenly when you start getting into, like, Frankenstein medicine.
Indeed,
and,
it is.
you know, things that aren't supposed to be suddenly become things that can be. It's coming up to 6:50, 10 minutes to 7. We're nearly out of the first hour. Blexley comes in and the time just absolutely flies. We'll be back right after this with some more stories. Apparently Mauritius is demanding more money for the Chagos Islands. Prince Harry is coming in to have yet another conversation with his lawyers about why he doesn't get royal protection. And we're going to be talking about pathetic French migrant barriers. That's in The Sun as well. This is Morning Glory.
come out today.
Was stabbed, not just multiple times. One of them, I think, was stabbed 86 times, the other 92 times, and the third one a similar number. And the one that was stabbed 86 times, he only stopped stabbing her because he attempted to then remove her head. This was Axel Rudacabana, and the protests to which we're referring and where Lucy Connolly made her comments were in respect of those killings.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:52. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. 4 glorious hours of Morning Glory with lots to tell you. Joanna from Salisbury says, Mike, I've got news for you. It's Easter holidays. All the kids are up. It's not term time. No, I know that, but all the kids are probably not up, actually, because they don't have to get up for school. They may not be bothering to get up at all, because they might have been up all night playing some ridiculous video game. Who can say? Kenny from Edinburgh says, Mike, I don't care if a police chief is having extramarital affairs. That's his personal business, not the country's. The only thing that he should be judged on is he doing a good job? And judging by the two-tier policing policy these days, that would be a definite no. Well, I think, Kenny from Edinburgh, it is a symptom of why the police in this country aren't working terribly well, because they're not really given too much oversight. They're not actually being, watched. They're not actually being, recorded, whatever it is that they're doing. And they are, again, if you're doing your job, if you're doing a great job of arresting the bad guys and locking lots of people up, nobody cares really what you do on the side. But if you're not doing that, people do care what you do on the side.
Yes, but policing doesn't see itself as solely the arbiters of locking people up, catching bad people. They have made themselves, or their senior leaders have, in the last generation or two of policing, deliberately into a social service.
Yes.
It's why they involve themselves in so much that is not police work, as defined by Sir Robert Peel nearly 200 years ago. And when he
is that their fault? Because sometimes the police will say to me, oh, we've had to take on all these other jobs like social services and all the rest of it, which we don't want to do.
It is absolutely their fault.
Yeah.
Their bosses wanted this.
Yeah.
They've allowed it because they've all gone to university and they've all got all these degrees and they've studied social sciences and loads of things that are largely irrelevant to policing. They have made themselves deliberately. In fact, they had a saying in policing that we are the service that doesn't say no. And so it got themselves into this position of dealing with so much that wasn't police work. They allowed it to happen, and they should have put their foot down, but they didn't because it suited them. And because a lot of police bosses got away from the rough and tumble of the front line as quickly as they possibly could because they thought it was grubby and it was beneath them, as opposed to really treasuring the people that want to do that and do it day in,
Who
day
actually
out.
quite enjoy arresting bad guys.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as a broader thing, it's all part of the erosion of blue-collar work.
Yes. Quite right, too.
That's another point.
Let's have a look at the way that the French deal with such matters, right? There's a great picture in The Sun on page 21, Calais migrant scandal. Barrier is a French farce. And what's happened here is there's a road somewhere on the approach, and we've all been there at some point or other in our lives. I'm sure you have. I certainly have. As you drive up to where the ferries go from and where the sort of channel crossings are. French officials have been blasted for spending British taxpayers' cash on pathetic road barriers. They basically put up what can only be described as something that you wouldn't even put up at Glastonbury. I mean, you would, this is the worst barrier for a road I've ever seen, because you can literally go round it onto the
Yeah,
grass
the road's flat
verge.
either
The
side,
road's
isn't it?
flat either side. You can just go round it and go on the grass verge, even if you were going to have it stopping you. It's aimed at preventing people smugglers taking boats, motors and life jackets to beaches, right? But it's on a road surrounded by flat fields with nothing to stop criminals simply driving around it. And the barriers are only in use at night.
Yeah, there's more...
This is the result of what? £476 million that we've given them. They spent about 10 quid on a barrier.
And this is what you get for all
Zut
that
alors.
money. Yeah.
I mean, what a joke.
I mean, there's more robust barriers in the multi-storey car park than my local shopping centre.
You listen, I can't get out the NCP, you know, because the barrier's better than this.
Yeah.
You know?
It's just utterly...
It is ridiculous.
Pointless and pathetic, and I expect somebody got paid an awful lot of money to stick it in the ground.
Absolutely
Worthless.
Right. Completely worthless. Another interesting migrant story is on the bottom of this particular story in The Sun, saying that migrants from Eritrea now make up 1 in 5 of those people crossing on the illegal boats. And this is interesting because I don't know if you were here, you might have missed it actually because you might have been away, but a couple of weeks ago there was a street fight in Sheffield, of all places, taking part with about up to 50 and 60 men, young men, with machetes. It turned out they were all Eritreans. One group was apparently in favour of the Eritrean government, another group was against the Eritrean government, and they're fighting on the streets of Sheffield, a British city where they shouldn't even be.
Yeah, it's...
I mean, what a joke that is.
It's worrying how we get these trends of so many migrants coming from one country or another, didn't we? Not so long ago, it was the Albanians.
Yeah.
Because you can see how quickly word spreads at home.
Yeah.
We got in. Yeah, it's great. I'm in a hotel.
Yeah.
I'm fed. I've had a nurse come round and sort my verruca out. Everything is hunky-dory in the UK, even though I'm an illegal immigrant who slung my passport in the English Channel as we approach Dover.
And hopefully by the time you get here to join me, I'll have a house.
Yeah, exactly. And so it spreads.
Yeah.
The contagion of it all.
I know.
And now it's Eritreans. This time next year, it'll probably be somebody else.
I mean, I would wager that most people listening to this show, and I would maybe count myself in that group, wouldn't even know where Eritrea was on a map. If you showed them a map of Africa, where the hell is Eritrea? Why are they all coming here?
Exactly.
What's it got to do with us?
We all know why they're coming here.
Yeah.
There's not a war going on in Eritrea.
No.
There's no civil war going on in Eritrea.
Just in Sheffield.
Yeah, exactly.
You
So
know.
they bring their grievances here.
I know.
Thank you very much.
Let's have a look at this final story. Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick put this out a couple of days ago. We're hoping to get him on the show this week, but we're going to get Ian Aitchison talking about it. In prisons in this country, they are apparently overrun by Islamist gangs, self-styled Muslim Brotherhood leaders seizing control of wings in high-security facilities, while the prison system basically protects them rather than the officers.
I had very little time for Robert Jenrick when he was in the government.
Yeah.
But actually, credit where it's due.
Yeah.
You would think perhaps
He's
that
doing
he
a
was
great
the
job
leader
now.
of the Conservatives and not Kemi
I know.
Badenoch. He's raising very important matters that chime with very many people, and consequently he's getting airtime and column inches.
He is.
He's got
and
his
this is a
finger on the
massive
pulse.
story. I'm going to be, developing this a little bit later on because we're out of time for now. But Peter Blexley, as ever, great to see you. Fantastic to get your views this morning on all manner of things. We will see you again very soon, I'm sure, if not on this show, on many other shows, including Blank of the Week, including Jeremy Kyle, and of course, including every other show on Talk. I'm Mike Graham. More coming up after the news.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips, in Leeds it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
A couple of weeks
How
ago.
much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Keeping it real.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to 3 minutes past 7. The sun is now definitely up and it is blasting its way through the building here on the 17th floor of the world headquarters of Common Sense. We're here at News UK, of course, and we are going to be here until 10 o'clock when Julie Hartley-Brewer will be along. Lots of people beginning to see the light as well about the tariffs. Lots of people in different countries, Ursula von der Leyen also saying that it's time perhaps the EU went for zero tariffs with America so that everybody can get along and do some business with each other. Benjamin Netanyahu went to the Oval Office yesterday and said we're going to reduce our tariffs to zero. We don't want to have a trade deficit with the United States of America. The markets, of course, are not panicking. The markets are doing what markets do, which means that they go down as well as up. Anyone can tell you that. Lots of financial advisors will say, actually, this is a good opportunity to buy some stock if you've got any money. Most people, of course, haven't got any money because Rachel Reeves and Rachel Thieves has taken it away from them. You need to get in touch with us, of course, 0344 499 1000. If you've forgotten how to do it, here's what you have to do.
Hi, Mike. Andrew from Portsmouth. Great show.
Morning, Mike. John here in Lancashire.
Morning, Mike. Brian here. Stuck on the M25, but never mind.
Hi, Mike. Great show. This is Hannah from London.
Oh, hi, Mike. Ben from Bristol. I'm in a bad way, mate.
Morning, Mike. It's Mark in Lancashire.
Morning, Mike. Adam from Leicester. Great show.
Thank you very much indeed. Keep those calls coming in, keep those messages coming in, because, of course, many people get themselves into a right old tizzy about what the news is. And what you have to do when you listen to this show is understand that we will give you the truth, we'll give you the whole truth, we'll give you nothing but the truth. There'll be no spin, there will be no ridiculousness, and there will certainly not be panic in the air, because we've got the front page of the Daily Telegraph here, where Donald Trump says, do not be a panican, which is a new party based on weak and stupid people criticising his tariff agenda, because the tariffs, ladies and gentlemen, will end up working, and the markets will recover and everything will be back to normal in probably a few days' time. 0344 499 1000. Coming up, we're going to talk about the Southport inquiry, which has got underway. Benedict Spence is going to join us. We're going to talk about Keir Starmer and why he ignored calls to investigate Dan Norris, the MP who's been accused of bullying and also sexual offences against children. We'll find out what's going on with that. And also, we will talk about why the Muslim Brotherhood seems to have got such a foothold in the prisons of this country, something that's been uncovered by Robert Jenrick. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. 0344 499 1000. Also, one story that we didn't get to, and I went to get to this with Peter Blexley, is you don't have to bother getting married, right, anymore, because it turns out that a study has found out that if you get a pet, it's just as good as getting a husband. Probably cheaper as well, and you can trust them better as well. 0344 499 1000. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Oh, and by the way, another prediction of mine looks like it's going to come true. The Unite Union has come out overnight and said the bin strike in Birmingham is just the beginning, because pretty soon there's going to be bin strikes all over the country. And I said this about 2 weeks ago, that this is the kind of thing that brings down a government, because once the bins don't get emptied, and once you've got a situation in Birmingham where the piles of black bin bags have now reached epic proportions, they're 12 feet deep. this means that the country does not actually work. It's like a third world country. It's like something out of Calcutta. It's like something out of the Philippines. It is an absolute disgrace. And if it starts to spread to other cities in this country, then I'm afraid the government is going to be under severe pressure to sort it out. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Let's talk to Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator. Benedict, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I suppose we have to start with the tariff story, but it looks as though, despite all the doom and gloom merchants around the world, and despite people saying, oh my God, look at all the money that we're losing off our pensions, and look at the crashing of the stock market, it looks as though, if Ursula von der Leyen's suddenly offering zero tariffs to America, then surely it looks like Donald Trump is winning the debate, isn't he?
Yeah, for all of the nonsense that we heard from European politicians about how we need to stand up to Donald Trump, we need to show him what's what, we need to show that we can stand on our own 2 feet and we're not going to be bullied. We all knew what was going to happen ultimately, because there isn't a single unitary power as strong as the United States. Europe in particular has spent the last couple of decades actively trying to suppress its own growth and make itself weaker. So I'm not surprised, certainly in the case of the EU, that on the one hand you do have some, and you will continue to have some, who will say we need to be strong, this is our moment to be strong, this, that and the other. And there will be others who will be looking at this practically and going, yeah, we've spent a long time fiddling whilst we could have been making ourselves economically more powerful to stand up to them, but now we're not, and we are going to end up being dragged into their sphere of influence more anyway, so it might be time to actually come to the table and do a deal. Not that this will end up with no tariffs for the EU, let's just be very clear about that. The tariffs are here to stay, so when I hear about certain countries saying, well, maybe we'll just abolish all of our tariffs for the US, I'm not even sure that that's going to get rid of some of them. I think that actually Donald Trump has an idea in his mind where there will be a universal 10% tariff rate for everybody, even his friends, because that is how he's going to re-augment the US economy, and that actually this is what he sees as the future, is effectively the US extracting rent from allies and enemies alike.
Yeah, sure. But as he pointed out the weekend, and I know this for a fact because I've lived in America and I've compared the prices of things. A car that would cost, I know not many people buy American cars, but people are buying Ford Mustangs over here in quite big numbers. You normally don't go a day without seeing one. The price of a Mustang in America is about 50% of the price of a Mustang in Europe, and that's why he's kind of getting his knickers in a twist about it all. Because he's saying, if you're going to spend $30,000 on a Ford Mustang, why does it cost £60,000 to buy in London? And let's have a look at what Ursula von der Leyen said about the zero tariff debate.
We stand ready to negotiate with the United States. Indeed, we have offered 0 for 0 tariffs for industrial goods, as we have successfully done with many other trading partners. Because Europe is always ready for a good deal, so we keep it on the table. But we are also prepared to respond through countermeasures and defend our interests.
But, the European Union never slow to be complete and utter turncoat on what they may have said the week before. Here we are, Ursula von der Leyen going, yes, we will reduce tariffs to zero. Yeah, well, brilliant. That's not what you said last week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tell you what, it's also a curious position for Britain to be in, because if the EU ends up being sort of strong-armed into reducing its own tariffs that it imposes on US goods, it might not be in a particularly friendly mood towards the UK if the UK continues to have an even lower tariff rate than the EU does, because it'll be looking at any special reciprocal arrangements we have and going, well, hang on, this doesn't weaken Britain anymore. Actually, this makes Britain potentially a competitor. Right. So we might want to change the terms of whatever arrangements we have. The strange thing was, of course, when these tariffs were announced, it suddenly became a really good time to be a business in Northern Ireland, because you had unique access to Europe, to the UK, and to the US on better terms than almost anyone else. That I suspect won't last, though.
No, I suspect not as well. And, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu's also joined in. He went to the White House yesterday and spoke in the Oval Office to say they're going to drop all tariffs that they've got in Israel, and they're just going to go to net zero, I suppose, tariffs, which is the only time I've liked the word and the phrase net zero, because, of course, Keir Starmer is still banging on about net zero. Let's have a quick look at what he said yesterday while he was pretending that he was going to protect the car industry in this country.
There's a global race on for the jobs of the future in relation to net zero. More investment is coming into this country in relation to renewables than any other sector. I don't think now is the time to step away from that race. Now is the time to double down on that race. Some country is going to win the race when it comes to renewables and the changes for net zero. I want Britain to be in that race, and I want us to win that race.
When he says there's investment coming into the country for renewables, does that not mean that the government is offering such easy money to people who are investing in renewables that that's why they're doing it? So basically we're actually underwriting it all.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's such a scam when they say, oh, there's more coming in. It's because the government set up rules basically going, if you're not net zero compliant, we're going to make it very difficult for you.
Yeah, right.
And we'll you'll throw money at you if you can come up with net zero stuff. So yeah, this whole thing about us winning the race, and I'm sorry, it's a race in which we are basically now the only developed country that's going hell for leather because everybody else has worked out, this is rather expensive. I'm not sure this is a race we want to win.
Right.
And again, if the other thing, of course, is we're not actually very good at this sort of renewable stuff. Most of the stuff that we buy in that is renewables is bought in from China. And the other thing, of course, we're talking about the automotive industry.
Yeah.
It's not like we make particularly good environmentally friendly cars. We're well behind China and the United States on this. It's a nonsense thing that we're sort of racing towards, and it is making us poorer. And the strange thing about the tariff situation is, as I just spoke about with us sort of standing betwixt the US and the EU, it's a really good opportunity actually to make money, to double down on growth. This government is absolutely diametrically, ideologically opposed to that because it cares more about net zero than it does about growth.
Exactly. And looking at what they made a big deal of yesterday, which was, Keir Starmer going up to the West Midlands and saying, we're protecting the car industry because we're saying you don't have to do away with petrol and diesel cars by 2030. We'll give you until 2035. It makes absolutely no difference at all and does not in any way fill car manufacturers with any sense of a future whatsoever.
No, it doesn't. And, you sort of juxtapose this with the government's attitude towards things like infrastructure planning or steel production, and you're kind of sat there going, well, how can any industry, especially the automotive industry, actually take what this government says seriously? A lot of these cars, the other thing, of course, is, when you're talking about exports, a lot of these cars are never going to be exported because actually, as I say, other countries make better renewable and electric cars. So when you're sort of trying to sort of instill any kind of faith in the industry in this country, adding that extra 5 years on, people are just going to shrug and go, oh, whoop-de-doo, 5 whole years. Wonderful. That honestly, for as long as Ed Miliband remains in post, you can't take this government seriously on growth or anything because it's just very clear. It's tinkering around the edges, whilst actually there should be a sea change in attitude.
Yes. And just to illustrate how you can't take them seriously, here's Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Jaguar Land Rover, you don't need me to tell you, is an iconic British brand and company. It's got a proud history, and there are huge opportunities despite the challenges that we face for the future. When it comes to high-quality design and engineering, you, all of you, are gold standard. The skill, the expertise that Keir and I have seen here today demonstrate why that is.
Yes. Problem is, it's not a British company. It's owned by the Tata brothers in India.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she can't even get that right. I mean, it might be a British brand, but it's not a British company.
No, exactly. And it's so demoralising, actually, when you think about that, when you think about what's happened to so many sectors of the British economy, that actually we can say British this, British that, but it's not true.
No.
It's actually a lie.
That's right.
The funny thing is about the automotive industry, though, of course, it's not our sort of environmentally safe, friendly cars that anybody around the world actually cares about. Talking about Jaguar Land Rover as a brand, what people like about the British automotive industry is the luxury car aspect of it. I remember during when Russia invaded Ukraine and we put those sort of export bans on Bentleys and Aston Martins and stuff, and it didn't stop the trade deficit. They just started being sold to Kazakhstan instead of Russia, and then magically find themselves in Russia. That's what people like. They like the cars that make a lot of noise, that look good, and they go fast. Not this sort of, not this sort of I don't know, these sort of family cars that are going to run on a battery and go at 80 kilometres an hour for 80 kilometres before we have to charge them.
Right.
That's not what anybody wants to buy from the UK.
No, exactly right. Let's talk about Keir Starmer's other problem, which is a man by the name of Dan Norris, Labour MP and former mayor, of course, or about to not be the current mayor of the West Country. He beat Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg at the general election. He's been involved in Labour politics for a very long time. He's currently being accused of committing rape, child abduction and misconduct in a public office and sexual offences against a minor. He's also apparently been accused of bullying, and Sir Keir Starmer has now been told that he should have investigated Dan Norris back before he even ran for election. But he completely and utterly ignored all of the questions about him and not only allowed him to campaign for the seat in the West Country, but he actually campaigned with him. Yeah, I mean, you'd have thought, given the sort of the premium that Keir Starmer put on party discipline around things like anti-Semitism and loyalty to Jeremy Corbyn and people saying silly things about Israel and all that sort of thing, that he would have taken allegations like this or rumours like this a little bit more seriously. Now, I understand the Labour Party, a very large organisation, many people that you have to investigate for misbehaviour at any one time, so it is possible that the odd one might slip through the net here and there. However, the scale of the allegations and the allegations that were made before these particularly large accusations came out, I think are enough to sort of have raised eyebrows, if not actual alarm bells. And I think, again, the fact that this has been allowed to slide under the radar because he was somebody that was very well known and that was seen as a real scalp, being able to take Jacob Rees-Mogg's seat, I think perhaps that might have clouded some judgment, clouded some vision. Again, it's just one of those things where you almost just sort of shrug and sigh and go, another one, another MP who's misbehaved pretty appallingly. And again, I think it speaks to a real cultural problem that we have in our politics, that as much as it does attract some very good people, it also attracts some of the very people least suited for public life, for leadership. And all I can say is, if there is a leadership, if these charges do stick, if they are sort of pushed forward, Jacob Rees-Mogg might be fancying himself for a very quick return to the Commons at a by-election. Well, exactly right. And of course, it's not the only problem that Keir Starmer's got, because as I said yesterday, his weekend was kind of ruined by the fact that 2 Labour MPs went to go to Israel and were turned away on the grounds that they were considered to be anti-Semitic and likely to provide propaganda for Hamas. I mean, it's not a great look for Labour, is it? No, these 2 particular MPs... and the whole sort of thing around David Lammy then turning around and saying, this is outrageous. I know, how hypocritical is he? Yeah, exactly. I mean, the UK turns away elected politicians from all sorts of countries because we don't like their politics, because they've said things that our own politicians dislike. These MPs, amongst other things, have called for legal action to be taken against sitting Israeli government ministers. Is anybody surprised that those government ministers, one of whom I think is in fact in charge of who comes in and out of the country, might go, do you know what? Actually, no, I don't think we are going to let you in. If this is what you're going to do, you're just going to cause trouble. Right. I mean, as much as anything else, these are 2 backbench MPs. They're sort of relatively unknown. Yeah. And it continues to be first-time MPs for a start, aren't they? Yeah, and it continues to be the thing about Labour MPs. Why is it that at a time when there are so many issues in just about every constituency in the UK, rather than looking after the needs of your constituents first and foremost, you are swanning off to the Middle East as some sort of, envoy from the people of the United Kingdom to say, tear down this wall, stop the apartheid, stop the genocide, because this is what matters. That's not what you're there for. No. You're not the US president. You're not an international figure. You're a constituency MP, and there is a job to be done back here. Try telling that to a Labour MP, though. Yeah. But I think it's also more, I think, damaging for Labour, because it also shows that Labour has still not yet really shaken off all the accusations of anti-Semitism, because they've clearly got many MPs in their ranks, whether they be backbenchers or not, who are genuinely pro-Palestine but anti-Israel at the same time. Nothing wrong with being pro-Palestine if that's the way you want to be, but these are 2 MPs who, as far as the Israelis are concerned, have never demonstrated any dislike for Hamas and have only criticised Israel. Well, it's always the way that it's sort of framed. We need to stop selling weapons to Israel. We need to stop doing this with Israel. We need to stop doing that with Israel. And you think Israel is a country
that it's a very small country relatively, and it is surrounded by countries that historically have been very hostile, and in some cases are still actively hostile, that are much larger than it. Actually, what is wrong with selling them weapons? It's not like we give them stuff for free. We sell them on the open market. Why is Israel particularly unique? There are all sorts of countries that we do business with that these people do not care about. And that's always the thing. You never hear them talking about Sudan or any of these other countries. This is the one they care about. And you have to ask, well, why might that be?
Yes, exactly right. Benedict, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Benedict Spence, Conservative commentator there, running the line over some of the big stories that we're dealing with this morning, including, of course, coming up, men playing pool in a women's pool tournament. We'll be talking about that. That's all over the Sun, page 13. We're going to talk about the Southport inquiry starting, the Muslim Brotherhood in prison. And coming up next, Henry Bolton is here to talk about this ridiculous barrier that's been erected in France, supposedly to stop migrants coming to Britain. It ain't working. Pete the Mole says, how is Rachel from accounts able to call the Prime Minister by his first name at the Jaguar Land Rover plant? Bit personal, isn't it? Well, they all do that, isn't it? And old Angela Rayner, our Kia's done this, our Kia's done that, our Kia, leave him alone, he's doing a great job, Kia. Plus, she's bigging up Jaguar Land Rover, yet slapping huge extra road tax charges on models. Yeah, well, yeah, if you buy a Land Rover, a Discovery, for example, or a Discovery Sport, or a Range Rover, over £40,000, your tax is going to go up massively because you're going to get charged a luxury road tax because you're making too much money. So the idea that they're standing there with the gall of a bunch of absolute liars saying we're supporting the car industry. Well, you're not supporting the car industry. You're charging people more money to drive. You're charging more money to people to park. You're charging more money for people to go into city centres. You're charging more money for people who break the speed limit. It's an absolute and utter disgrace. Ridiculous. Kenny from Edinburgh says, Mike, how can Ursula von der Leyen be allowed to decide financial policy for the EU? That'll affect millions of people when she doesn't represent anyone. Not one person voted for her. Very good point. And Gaynor in Bristol says, thanks very much for the bumper sticker. I love it and the show. Many of you are getting bumper stickers right now because the new batch went out and you're actually getting them. We are going to keep talking as well about this womb transplant that's happened, and it's on the front pages of all the papers this morning because my question to you is, it's all very well and I'm very happy for the family and I'm very glad that they've got the family that they wanted, and I'm very glad that the woman was able to get a womb transplanted from her sister into her own body so that she could give birth to a child that they're all going to be very happy about. But all I'm saying is, why are we paying for it? Why on earth is the NHS paying for not only the transplant itself, but also providing the expertise, providing the doctors, providing the nurses who are giving their time for free, apparently, while we've got people waiting in A&E departments for literally 12 hours to be seen. This is not a time, for glad handing in the NHS. If you want to do that, do it in private. Get it funded by somebody else. Do not use NHS facilities. Do not use NHS doctors and nurses. I'm sorry, I don't want to sound like the Grinch that stole Christmas, but I think that's right, and I think most people would agree with me. If you don't, let me know. 7:24.
What's come out today is further allegations around harassment and bullying within the local authority from where he operated as the mayor. And the report suggests that it came out in a staff survey a couple of years ago, and then the trade unions complained about how he was interacting with members of staff whilst he was mayor. And just for clarity, he's the MP for parts of Somerset, but he's also the elected mayor for the West Country region.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:27. I'm Mike Graham. Morning, Mike. Bins, says Graham in Mid Wales. My council tax went up by 10% and they didn't empty my bins yesterday due to what they called unforeseen circumstances. Bloody jokers, a lot of them here in Wales. Yeah, I know, unforeseen circumstances. They only come once every fortnight, and then so they don't come on one occasion. Suddenly you haven't got any bin collection for a month. Absolutely outrageous. Don't panic, Captain Mike, says Kev in Shropshire. If the market's never moved, how would anyone make any money? That's how it works. Risks high and low. And what a joke, the EU dropping tariffs. What's left for them after that? The protectionist racket will be entirely smashed. Let's get a voice note from Liam.
Good morning, Mike. Liam in Folkestone. Regarding Eritrean migrants and why they're here. Well, my late mum, she used to work for Kent County Council with them. The main reason is because they're escaping national service, of which they could spend 6 years in the military. Now, in next door Ethiopia, there's currently a brutal conflict there in its Tigray region, and it relies heavily on the Eritrean military. They don't want to do it, Mike. That's why they're heading to Calais and bringing their problems over to us.
Right.
Anyway, keep up the great work, mate. Great show.
Liam, a very interesting piece of information. So they're fleeing war, not because they're being killed, but because they don't want to be in national service. That's a very different definition to fleeing war, isn't it? So when you land and the Home Office go, why are you here from Eritrea? Oh, I'm fleeing war. Well, where's the war? Well, there isn't one actually in Eritrea, but it's next door, and they might want us to go and join it. So we don't really fancy fighting in it, so we've come here instead. How do you fancy a hotel and a kebab? While you're at it, here's a blanket and a nice new puffer jacket. For heaven's sake, let's talk to Henry Bolton, International Border Control Expert. If only somebody would control the bleeding borders. Henry, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
So we found out.
So
we found out today that the biggest number of people coming from one individual particular country is from Eritrea, and thanks to Liam, we now know why. They're escaping national service. Well, that's not a reason to give them bloody sanctuary, is it?
No, but it's been a long-standing justification for people to claim asylum in the United Kingdom, not just from Eritrea, from all sorts of parts of the world. If they arrive here and they claim that they're avoiding national service, then that's been given as a justification and been accepted as a justification for asylum. So if you're a conscientious objector, so to speak. Right. We've had Albanians, we've had Afghans, we've had Syrians, we've got Eritreans. These things sort of go in waves, we shouldn't read too much into which nationality is coming across the border first. I think what we need to do is find the steel to say, look, feel very sorry for you. Yeah, I wouldn't like to be conscripted either, but tough, you're not coming here. Right. We cannot accept every single person from around the world that is, living life in an inconvenience. And people might say, well, come on, conscription and possibly having to fight somewhere is more than an inconvenience. But look, if we take everybody
who is suffering from
drought...
What's it got to do with you and me in Britain? Nothing.
Nothing. And, people say we shouldn't get involved in wars overseas, something I sympathise with in most cases. Right. But you can't say, well, we're not going to get involved, but we will take everybody who's fleeing it. You know, you can't have it both ways,
No.
I don't think. And we simply can't cope. We can't cope financially or in terms of infrastructure. And we've talked about that on numerous occasions.
Yeah.
And your listeners know.
When you know the result, because I talked about this just a little while ago, last week or the week before, there was a massive sort of street brawl in Sheffield, of all places, between Eritreans who are, one, in favour of their own government and others who are against their own government, and they're fighting with machetes in a British city in broad daylight. I'm sorry, that's not on.
I've long said, Mike, that for many years, from probably about 2014, I was trying to say this, if we accept immigrants from parts of the world that are suffering conflict, and we import, or we're bringing people from both sides in that conflict, it is inevitable that conflict will start playing out on the streets of the United Kingdom. There are no ifs, there are no buts. It will happen. And, you know, the idea that we can do that and it won't happen is ridiculous and naive. I mean, and the other thing is that these are cultures in which violence has people in the United Kingdom simply don't appreciate it. And I'm glad for them that they don't. But in some parts of the world, death and violence is a part of everyday life.
Yeah.
You know, they don't blink an eye at cutting somebody's throats in some parts of the world, and that's just the way it is. And when we bring people like that into the United Kingdom with those sort of that sort of adjustment to extreme situations when they come into the United Kingdom, they're not going to suddenly change just because we give them asylum here or give them a hotel room.
Exactly. Well, we saw that with the Southport killer. You know, he wasn't born in Rwanda, but he had the Rwanda experience through his parents, and therefore he was exposed to the kind of violence that for many people in that part of the world is run-of-the-mill and a daily occurrence. And so for him, it wasn't at all unusual to go around stabbing young girls to death in a vicious and ghastly way.
Correct. And we shouldn't let people get away with saying, yes, but we need to take care of these people because they're all suffering from PTSD. No, that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is culturally and socially normal, to a certain extent, acceptable behaviour in the societies that they've come from. And so this is not PTSD, this is not mental illness, this is sort of cultural and behavioural norms from the society that they've come from. And when we bring people like that who have been experiencing those conflicts in the area that they live in, where they're in conflict with other people, and they meet those same people in the United Kingdom, we're going to see the conflict play out here. It's not rocket science. And you combine all this together, and it beggars belief that we are still allowing people in from that part of the world, that we're still letting Albanians in. I mean, it's slightly more sensitive because of Albania's relationship with the European Union, I suppose. But you know, when you've got 1 in 4 Albanian men in this country have got convictions, then surely it's time to say to the Albanian government, look, we're really sorry about this, but we're going to put a visa ban on your country until you stop exporting organised crime, and Kosovo.
But a bit late for that, but I mean, it would be a start, wouldn't it? And also, I mean, you know, we do Migrant of the Day here on this show, and I've got a story for you here that will put your hair standing up on end. Asylum accommodation whistleblowers have claimed 3 teenage Iranian asylum seekers went on holiday to their home country to visit family and enjoy water sports, despite claiming to have fled that country because of persecution. And then they went there, believe it or not, on holiday and came back.
Yeah, again, a long-standing issue, Mike. You know, there's nothing new in this. And why, you know, the government, the Home Office, has not simply said, look, if you return to your home country from the United Kingdom, and there are rules against it. I mean, you know, when you've claimed asylum, that asylum claim is null and void, and you're subject to immediate deportation. But we won't do it because we lack the political will and leadership to do it. We're not determined. You know, I'm ex-military. You know, there's a military phrase: selection and maintenance of the aim. If you decide that something is your aim, you damn well pursue that aim. You don't let anything derail you. The plan may change, but that aim remains that aim. And you know, there is none of that sort of direction, vision, or leadership in government. And until we get it, things like this are never going to be addressed. And you covered earlier the 2 MPs. But when you've got members of the ruling party sitting in the House of Commons who are actively advocating that we do let these people in, then government becomes weaker and weaker.
It does. One final story for you. I don't know if you've seen the picture in the Sun this morning of a ridiculous, probably the most useless barrier anybody's ever erected in the history of barriers on a road which is literally surrounded by flat fields that you just go round the barrier if you wanted to. It's supposed to stop migrants coming in to Calais and to the shores of northern France in order to get themselves into dinghies, in order to get themselves over to the United Kingdom. It's the most pathetic thing I've ever seen. And apparently that's the only thing that the French have done, having received £476 million from us in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, what I suspect has happened here, Mike, and actually it could happen in the UK, is that as a result of talks that the British government had with French a week or two ago, asking them to do more, and as a result of the French Interior Minister saying, well, perhaps we should do more, I suspect somebody has said something along the lines, it might even be a British diplomat or somebody from the Home Office who said to the French somewhere along the line, look, why don't you're not even putting barriers up to the beaches? So the French were going, okay, all right, then fair enough, we'll put a barrier up if that's going to work. I think to an extent the French local authorities and the gendarmerie in the north of France, in Normandy, are probably just thinking, like we are, what on earth are our political lords and masters up to here? There is no plan. There's nobody trying to address the legal aspects of it. There's nobody giving us the real authority and the tools to do anything. And they're probably just, every time they're told to do something sort of daft like this, they roll their eyes and, okay, whatever, boss,
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. How much does that cost? It looks a pretty solid piece of kit that you can just drive around, but probably a good few thousand.
I mean, I can't imagine it cost them $476 million, but that's another story.
No.
Anyway, listen, thanks very much indeed. Henry Bolton there talking to us about the madness of the current immigration policy and the fact that Eritreans are now the #1 country from which people are coming to these shores. Let's get a voice note from Lewis.
Hi Mike, it's Lewis here. I think this is a good argument here for bringing in national service again in the UK. Because if they had to do national service, they wouldn't even bother coming here. Anyway, good job.
It's a very good point, because if they're fleeing their own country because they want to avoid national service, bring national service in here and say, yeah, you're welcome to come, but as soon as you land on the shore, we'll give you a uniform and we'll take you off to an army barracks and we'll put you through your paces, and after 2 years you can go back home and do it there. Let's talk to Jamal, who's in Leeds. Hello, Jamal.
Hello, Mike. I'm so glad you've picked up on this story.
Yeah.
Because I thought I was going mad. I've been saying this for several years now, that there's this massive Eritrean population in Leeds, and people don't believe me.
Really?
Yeah, well, because of what I do for a living, I see the paperwork of these people.
Right.
I meet all of these people that come in. They've got, ID documentation, they get driving licenses, they get passports after a few years.
British ones?
With naturalisation certificates.
What, British passports?
English. British passports, Mike.
Crikey.
The first thing that they do when they arrive is have a baby, or have another baby, and have another baby. So, again, I think the phrase is anchor baby. Now, in and around Leeds, just outside of the city centre, there's an area called Little London, LS7. And then on the other side of Leeds city centre, there's an area called Lincoln Green, which I think is LS9.
Right.
These areas have a high concentration of council housing. And in the last 5, 6, 7 years, all the council housing and all the high-rise flats seem to have been allocated exclusively to Eritreans.
Wow.
And if anyone would like to argue that point with me, if you'd like to get someone from Leeds City Council to explain why, I'd be very happy to come back on the show and argue that point.
Well, you know what, we're going to try and do that. We'll try and get somebody from Leeds City Council. We'll get you back on as well, because it's an extraordinary state of affairs. I mean, I came upon it by accident because I happened to see a story a couple of weekends ago about the fighting that went on in Sheffield between these Eritrean gangs, and I was like, this is a bit weird. What's going on here? So I'm really grateful for your information, Jamal. Tell us more.
Well, so what I've noticed, I mean, Leeds is like every other city now. Rents are going up. It's quite difficult to find a property. If you're renting in the private sector, as I am, you go onto Rightmove or Spare Room, and all of a sudden you can only find about 5 results per area in a city the size of 750,000.
Right.
And I can only assume that's because people have been pushed out of the council properties due to new arrivals from Eritrea, Ethiopia, and wherever.
Yeah.
And so now there's more people renting in the private sector, and of course there's only so much demand. So this idea that, oh, there aren't enough council houses and we need to build more council houses. I mean, firstly, there didn't seem to be this problem 5 or 10 years ago.
Right.
It's the fact that you've let in thousands and thousands of people, of more people from Eritrea, and they all seem to be, because I used to do Deliveroo on my bike a few years ago, part-time, and again, I said this a few years ago to the other riders who all called me racist. Well, some of them, look what's happening to the demographics of the riders, where you're being replaced by all these guys that are coming over from Eritrea and Ethiopia, don't necessarily have the right to work, and are all working illegally.
Right.
On illegally.
I was going to ask, that was my next question. So are they working as, what, Deliveroo drivers, whatever?
Yes, so the vast majority now of Deliveroo is that work on e-bikes, and I must clarify, illegally converted e-bikes, seem to be from Eritrea or Ethiopia.
Right. Amazing. I mean, difficult to put a number on it, Jamal, but just finally, I mean, well, how many people would you say in Leeds are from those two countries, Eritrea and Ethiopia? A couple of thousand?
Yeah, I would say so, yes. It seems like more because they seem to be housed in the area that I've said, which is London and Lincoln Green, which are immediately next to Leeds City Centre. So when you walk around Leeds City Centre now, you see a lot of them because they're all concentrated in that area.
Right.
So people that are living in North Leeds or South Leeds and don't really go into the centre much are probably completely oblivious to the fact that there are so many of these people here.
Yeah. Extraordinary story. Listen, Jamal, I really appreciate your call. Thank you so much. We're gonna take that information. We're going to go to Leeds City Council and we're going to try and get somebody on to talk about it. Really, really interesting. There may be other parts of the north of England, like Sheffield, like Leeds, where these Eritreans are going and where they're turning up. It turns out that I think 1 in 5 is the figure of people who come to this country now on the small boats are from Eritrea. So by far and away, they are the biggest number. And now we've learned, thanks to all of the great information that we get provided by you, the listeners and the viewers, is they're coming here to avoid national service. They're not fleeing a bleeding war. They're coming here because they can. Simple as that. 7:43.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:45. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 8 o'clock. The footsie opens, of course, at 8 o'clock. We'll bring you how it opens because I've got this from Neil in Dundee with all the bleating in the media about Trump's tariffs. Have you seen the Japanese stock market up 5.5% on yesterday, a minor correction, and the Trump train is back on track. Well, I mean, I think a lot of people will be eating humble pie and looking a bit stupid in about 2 days' time when the economy looks like it's actually on the up, when tariffs have all been reduced and turned down by various people, and the stock markets start to recover, and people start to, you know, see the wisdom of buying low and selling high, because that's how you make some serious money. Rupert Bell is here. He knows a thing or two about serious money. He's Talk's royal correspondent, of course. Prince Harry is back in the country fighting yet another case against the Home Office for his own protection. Rupert, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Yes, it hasn't actually been 100% confirmed, but it is assumed that he has come in, jetting in yesterday for the court case that starts today, reviewing the security issues that he's been fighting, saying the reason he doesn't come here is because he wants a full level of protection for him and his family when he's in this country. So that's the reason here. Speculation, did he meet the King and Queen before they went off to Italy to begin their 4-day state visit? Well, we just don't know the details, but we'll get, you know, obviously we would expect to see Harry appearing at court this morning if he is definitely in this country. You know, I think the Sun said yesterday that it was in, but as yet no official sighting, I suppose. He's come in with protection, I assume, to attend the court case.
Yes. I mean, bizarrely, you say that as if it's run-of-the-mill, but, you know, it's a kind of ironic situation, isn't it, where he gets protection while he's here. When he goes to the court, he's arguing he doesn't have enough protection. And you go, well, hang on, what about the protection you just had to come in? But, you know, how many times are you going to fight this thing? Because he's lost it at least once already, hasn't he?
Well, I think it comes to a head over these 2 days. So I think we will, that hopefully will be the end of the saga, one way or, excuse me, one way or another. I think the issue is, it's not against the King per se, it's against the Home Office, who don't, as he's no longer a full working member of the royal family, the issue is they say he is not entitled to a full level of protection as no longer a full member of the royal family. I don't think anyone is saying that he shouldn't have some level of security, because he is, whether he's working or a non-working royal, a member of the royal family, and that does put him under a degree of, you know, there would be security concerns. There's no two ways about it. But it's the full level that he's saying that he shouldn't be afforded. But he will get, if he lets people know when he's here, I am pretty sure they will not let him go unprotected. It's just not in anyone's interest.
Yeah, but it's not true, though, Rupert. As you say, as soon as he lands at Heathrow, he gets police protection. And he gets police protection all the way to wherever he's staying, whether it's a hotel or a royal residence. He'll get police protection and cars all the way to the High Court and back. You know, so he's arguing about something he's already got.
Yeah, and then when you think that sometimes he says he's not safe here, yet he goes to Nigeria and Colombia on quasi-royal state visits.
I mean, the bloke's a complete moron.
So, you know. I mean, this is where I think it's frustrating for people that, you know, they know it would not be in this country's interest to let him go unprotected, even at a minor level, just to give him...
No, I know, but he's not, though, is he?
Well, I don't think he doesn't get the full level of protection, but if he's, I mean, when he comes to the coronation and all those things, of course he was swept up in the full security bubble. Right. But I think at the moment Meghan doesn't want to come here anyway.
Well, that's fine, because we don't want her to come here, so that's absolutely fine. Yeah, well, it's just to stay where she is. Is he frozen? Rupert's frozen. Oh, never mind. I wanted to goad him about the fact that he gave me a couple of tips for the Grand National, and which I didn't follow because I was advised by the people at talkSport, don't listen to Rupert, listen to Lizzie Clark. And she, of course, gave us the winner, which was Nick Rockett. Thank you very much indeed. This is Talk. Coming up, we'll talk some more about the transplanted womb baby and whether or not the NHS should be getting involved in doing this kind of stuff. This is Talk.
the Hawk T1 will have its out-of-service date in the next 5 to 10 years. And there are probably 3 options that they're looking at to make sure that doesn't happen. The first would be to upgrade the Hawk T2, extend the life of the second sort of model. The second one would be to buy a commercial off-the-shelf plane, and that could be a Korean one or the one which causes all the problem, the Leonardo M346. Or thirdly, which I think is probably more likely, that will develop a UK model designed and linked to the Tempest programme.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:53. I'm Mike Graham. The sun is up. It looks like another beautiful day. Still a little bit of a chill wind out there, so I'm not quite sure if we can properly bask in it this afternoon, but we'll certainly do our best to try. My family are all still here, so, you know, it's a heavy duty going on with me when it comes to the old socialising. But an amazing story this morning. Front page of the Daily Mail. Baby born after womb transplant in UK first. A British mother hails healthy daughter as her greatest gift, thanks to her sister, who's 42 years of age, who donated her uterus. We're going to talk to Ellis Downs now, consultant in obstetrics and gynaecology at London's Gynaecology. Ellis, a very good morning to you. I suppose the first question is, how did they do it? Because it seems like quite a complicated old situation, this. I mean, is it physically taking somebody's womb out of them and physically putting it into another woman?
Well, good morning, Mike. And I have to say, before I answer that question, the sun is shining, and isn't it wonderful in such a miserable world at the moment? We've got some fantastic news to share.
Absolutely.
I mean, really, this is a blessed, wonderful day. And the surgical team of Richard Smith and Isabel Cregola and their colleagues have given their lives to days like today, where we can share in the glory of what is technically one of the biggest challenges in medicine. The team took a uterus out of the patient's sister. They took a healthy uterus, and they then had to transplant it back into the patient who was born with a very rare genetic condition where she wasn't born without a uterus. It's called Rokitansky syndrome, phenomenally rare. About 1 in 15,000 women are born without a uterus.
Right.
And when they took the uterus out, and the uterus is about the size of a pear, they then had to very carefully detach it from its blood vessels, its ligaments, and its nerves. And in a complex operation, which took 17 hours, they then had to, as it were, plumb it back in and connect all the blood vessels and all the ligaments together. It is one of the most technically difficult things that you can do as a surgeon. And they managed to get...
And it's never been done before, right?
It had been done before, yes. It's important, but we acknowledge that this isn't the first in the world. But what we're celebrating today is the first pregnancy in a uterus transplanted in the United Kingdom.
Okay.
The first pregnancy was actually in Sweden in 2014. And the team here in England have spent 25 years developing and refining not just the surgical techniques, but also the immune aspects, because there's no point in putting a uterus in unless it's working properly. And the huge challenge in pregnancy is as the uterus grows, its blood vessels grow, and you need to get enough blood into the uterus for the developing baby.
Right. So when they transplanted the uterus, there was no baby, presumably. So was the baby conceived naturally then after that?
No, in this particular case, and what is generally the case, embryos were created during IVF, and the embryos were frozen. It's not possible to join the fallopian tubes together. So after uterine transplantation, you have to have assisted reproduction. So the team actually put the uterus in, and they with their skills, they made sure the uterus was working properly. Just a few weeks after the transplant, the uterus was healthy enough that the patient actually had a period, and she conceived on her first cycle of IVF when the embryo was implanted. So you can't have natural conception after uterine transplantation. When pregnancies occur, they occur after IVF.
Okay.
And you can see there with that magnificent picture of the team from all around celebrating the joy that their work is finally complete with the baby that came into the world 6 weeks ago.
Yeah. A couple of questions for you, which are more political probably than medical, if you don't mind. One is, could you do this to a trans woman? Could you transfer a uterus into a trans woman who was originally biologically a man who wanted to have the experience of pregnancy?
Well, I'm a gynecologist. I'm not an ethicist. I know that the team have been working very closely with the regulatory authorities, and at the moment, trans people are not eligible for uterine transplant in the current regulations.
Right. Well, that's probably a good thing. And secondly, there's talk in the Times piece today that, you know, the NHS is hopeful that they might be able to now start funding these womb transplants. A lot of people would say that's possibly not something that we should be using the NHS for. What do you think?
Well, we think there are about 15,000 women in the country who don't have a uterus who could potentially benefit from that. Of those, about 500 are women who've been born without a uterus, and the remainder are women who sadly have had to have the uterus taken away, either because of benign disease like endometriosis or multiple fibroids, or because of cancer. It's a difficult question, isn't it? This initial treatment was all funded privately until she became pregnant, and it was then funded by the NHS, as any pregnancy would be in the NHS sector. Currently, this is experimental surgery, and these patients are being treated in clinical trials. If it becomes accepted, if the success rates go up, then I think it is only right and proper, as any medical care develops, that this should be considered for NHS treatment.
Ellis, it's a fascinating story, and you've explained it brilliantly, so thank you very much indeed, and please enjoy the rest of the day as the sun shines and we celebrate this incredible piece of work in the scientific world. As I say, absolutely groundbreaking stuff, but on front pages of the newspapers this morning, talking about the first womb transplant patient having a miracle baby. It's a fantastic thing. Ellis Downs, consultant in obstetrics and gynaecology at London Gynaecology, explaining it all very well there. You'll be pleased to know that trans women are not allowed to have this kind of surgery, which I think is absolutely as it should be. But will the NHS suddenly start taking this up? Will the NHS suddenly start funding it? And part of this funding, of course, came from the NHS. I don't think it should happen that way. I think it should be done privately. I think it should, a bit like IVF, I don't think people should be expecting taxpayers to pay for it. It's as simple as that. Coming up, Dan Hodges is here. He's gone so right-wing now, we're thinking of giving him a show. This is Talk.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips, in Leeds it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. 4 glorious hours of Morning Glory. And if you don't make the show, make sure that if somebody you know doesn't make the show, you watch the podcast, you listen to the podcast. It goes out every single day, just after the show finishes, the best of the show, of course. The FTSE 100 index is open, and it's gone up by 1%. So, you know, all you doom and gloom merchants who are going, oh, my God, the markets are killing us, everybody's losing money, it's a nightmare. It's correcting itself, as, of course, it did in Japan, and, of course, as it will over the next few days. So all the panic merchants can just calm down, as Donald Trump says on the front page of The Telegraph, don't be a panican, which, according to The Telegraph, is a new party based on weak and stupid people criticising his tariff agenda. That's a bit harsh thing to say about Julie Hartley-Brewer, I can say that. You know, that's not fair at all. But anyway, she'll be in at 10 o'clock, of course, to continue to have a go at Donald Trump and say he's ruining the economy. But anyway, listen, tariffs are gone. It looks as though the European Union under Ursula von der Leyen is going to do away with them. It looks as though the Israelis have done away with them. It looks as though many countries in the Far East are doing away with them. You know, the world is not perfect, right? And I'm not going to sit here and say Donald Trump's a genius, but it does seem as though there have been some very unfair things going on. Like I said, you want to buy a Ford Mustang in America? Costs you about $35,000. You want to buy one here? Costs you about 50,000 quid. You know, that doesn't seem right, does it? 0344 499 1000. Angela Rayner back in the news, of course, because she's been talking against her friends in the Unite Union, saying that basically they should sit down with Birmingham City Council and solve the dreaded bin crisis. Meanwhile, Unite are saying, hang on a minute, the Birmingham bin crisis might be just the beginning. We might actually take strike action in all sorts of other places, like Leeds, like Sheffield, like London, like Exeter, like Cardiff. You never know where there's going to be a national strike for bin collections. And if that does happen, that will be the death knell of this government, or the beginning of the end at least. 0344 499 1000. Let's get a voice note from Kitty.
Morning, Mike. It's Kitty from Kent again. I'm really sorry, but Angela's just knocked on the door again and she wants a word. Here, Mike! I heard you and I saw you taking the mickey out of me, making right fun of me, referring to our kid. Well, he's our kid. And I thank you not to say things like that, because people like you stop people like me going on safari. I want to go on safari, mate.
Of course you want to go to safari, Angela, but unfortunately at the moment things are a little bit difficult, so please try not to get on any more private jets. Please don't go anywhere else. Also, Labour Party MPs are not having a great time of it, turning up in foreign countries, trying to gain access through their borders. They're not being let in. 2 Labour Party MPs, of course, rejected by Israel over the weekend and told, sorry, you can't come in here because you're too anti-Semitic. It's that simple. 5 minutes past 8. This, of course, is Morning Glory. We've got loads of other stuff going on. We're going to talk about the Eritreans as well. This is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. And let's not forget the story we just talked about before the news, this incredible story about a woman who received Britain's first womb transplant. She's given birth to a healthy girl in a miracle breakthrough for modern medicine. Amy Isabel Davidson, born in February at an NHS hospital in London. That's a huge milestone that offers hope to thousands of women with infertility. My point is that I don't think this should be offered on the NHS, even though the NHS is starting to sniff around it going, you know, we could offer this to women who are without a uterus. I don't think, you know, it's a wonderful thing. It's a great miracle piece of, you know, modern medical science. But let's not start offering it to people for free, because I don't think that's the way forward for the NHS. Because I've been talking to a friend of mine whose father was unfortunately taken into an A&E hospital just yesterday, and he was told it would be about 5 hours before he could be seen by anybody, and after he was seen by somebody, they said, you know, you're going to have to wait until somebody can come and pick you up and take you home. We can't obviously do that. We can't give you a bed. He collapsed in the A&E because of all the blood loss that he'd had, because he had a nosebleed that wouldn't stop, and basically they couldn't do anything for him, and they just said, well, we're terribly sorry, can somebody just come and get him out of the A&E? You know, I mean, it's unbelievable what's going on. When you hear people like Wes Streeting saying it's all getting fixed, you really know that it's not. You know, there were thousands and thousands of people in this A&E department, apparently, according to my friend who told me the story yesterday. Let's say a very good morning, though, to Dan Hodges, commentator at the Man on Sunday. Dan, very good morning to you. Things are getting so bad, Dan, that people have said to me here in the building, you know, Dan Hodges has gone so far to the right, maybe we should offer him a show.
Surely it's not that bad, is it?
I think it is. I think it is.
Yeah,
We've been agreeing too much.
I better start to calm things down.
We've been agreeing too much, so you're obviously going to have to sort of lurch to the left here. Let's kick things off with not the tariffs, because you know it's a boring. To me, it's a boring conversation. You know, nobody really understands international trade. You know, the tariffs are what they are. It will all settle down at some point or other. The markets are already coming back this morning, so you know the FTSE 100 index is up as opposed to what it's been for the last couple of days. So you know, let's begin with the bin strike, because I think the bin strike is a bigger story in a way, because apparently in Birmingham right now there are 12-foot deep, you know, sort of piles of garbage and black bin liners. And I remember the 70s when this actually ended up becoming the one thing that brought down the government.
Well, I mean, I think the thing that brought down the government actually was that the bin strike in the 1970s was indicative of broader issues and indeed economic collapse. So just to start off, I've got to be honest, I'm not quite sanguine, to put it mildly, as you are about the mayhem that Donald Trump...
OK, well, we'll come back to that. We'll come back to that.
Yeah, but on the bin strike, the thing for the bin strike is, I mean, you said about the 1970s. I mean, obviously, I remember it was also... indicative of what was going on in Liverpool in the 1980s, when the Labour council in Liverpool lost complete, you know, control of the city because of its ideology.
Yeah.
But the key thing for me is you have accurately pointed out what is happening in Birmingham is a national scandal, but it's not a national story. It's not something that's dominating the headlines. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other stuff going on, as I've just touched on, that people are focusing on. But I think what for me this underlines, before we get into the broader politics, is once again that if something doesn't happen in London, it's not really perceived to be at all. And I think this is what more broadly underpins the problem for the government, not just Labour, but for all politicians.
Yeah.
You remember under Boris, a big thing was, you know, we were going to get all this levelling up. That's a big reason why Boris won the election against Corbyn. And then when Boris was kicked out, the levelling up agenda basically went with him. And there's not really.
But we've still got a department of levelling up, apparently, with loads of people working in it.
Although I'm not entirely sure. I think one of the first things that Angela Rayner did was say she wasn't going to refer to it as levelling up anymore, and then the agenda was dumped. Now I'm sure, you know, if you had a minister on this programme, they would angrily say, no, we're doing X, Y, and Z for the Red Wall, for the regions, for areas outside of London. But it's just not being communicated. I mean, I haven't seen, for example, Keir Starmer make a major specific speech or statement about this crisis, or to be honest, many sort of senior Labour politicians until Angela Rayner's recent intervention. And I think that's the problem. And I think politicians of all political parties have got to understand, you know, there is a world outside the M25. And they need to start focusing on it. And because, as I said, what's happening is just, I mean, it's disgusting.
Well, particularly given the fact that there's big local elections going on in less than a month, and they're out there and sort of supposedly campaigning in all sorts of different places, but they, as you say, they don't seem to grasp the kind of the zeitgeist of what people are thinking outside of the M25. Let's have a look at what Angela Rayner had to say about this yesterday.
I'd like to update the House on the waste dispute in Birmingham. Our priority is tackling the misery and disruption for residents. Government has consistently urged the Council and Unite to sit down and resolve the dispute. I welcome that they met yesterday and that further talks are taking place today, and we continue to press all parties to negotiate an urgent resolution. It is essential to protect public health by tackling the backlog of waste, and my department is in close contact with the Council. This weekend I met with the Council leader and the Managing Director, and we're providing ongoing support to address the public health emergency. Collections took place over the weekend and will continue this week to clear the backlog and protect the public health. This government continues to support Birmingham's recovery.
But what she doesn't support, apparently, is the Unite union, because she got into trouble over the weekend by making a statement saying that Unite should get round the table and they shouldn't block the lorries from coming out, trying to do emergency pickups, because she thought that that was, against the rules. And the talks, of course, yesterday, like the day before, haven't gone anywhere.
No, absolutely, and I mean, I'll give credit for Angela Rayner for actually, making those statements, because obviously politically she's seen as someone who is close to the union. So in that sense, it was quite politically brave. But there's another broader issue here as well. This is not going to be the end of this. We're going to be seeing more of this, because we are now in a situation where the government has announced it's going to be introducing significant public spending cuts. And as a result, as I say, of the mayhem that we've seen on the financial markets and over the last few days, everyone is now expecting that those spending cuts are going to have to get deeper.
Right.
And one of the areas that really is feeling the squeeze is local government. And again, this is an issue that sort of drifts away outside of election times. We have got local elections coming up, so there will be a bit more focus on it. But again, this is the thing that we see it time and time again. The infrastructure, the national infrastructure, it is getting eroded. Remember, I was on I think last time I was on a couple of weeks ago, and I actually did something which a number of people thought was controversial, which was I was saying, I think we are going to have to start possibly looking at doing something like raising taxes on rich people to start to address this, because the strategy that we've had from governments of all persuasions over the last 10, 20 years of trying to improve the country by consistently trying to find ways of cutting back on investment in vital public services, it just isn't working. And people, the public, are just sick and tired of it.
But there's a reason for that, Dan. It's because most of the money that you and I pay in council tax doesn't go to services. It goes to salaries and pensions. That's the problem. The government's too big. Even locally, it's too big.
Well, look, we all understand that there are significant issues. But when you have a situation like we have now, where the most basic services, and I can't think of a more basic service that has to be provided than doing away with the rubbish. I think most people would put that at the very top of their list.
Totally.
And again, we're looking at the.
This is why it's such a big story for me.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and you're right, and it should be a much bigger story. Like I said, this is a national. It's not just a national disgrace; it's an international disgrace. Right. What are people looking at these pictures?
Yeah.
You're Britain.
We actually did a couple of weeks ago, just as an exercise. I asked people to send me pictures of what their street looked like and what their neighbourhood looked like. And the amount of fly tipping going on in Britain is absolutely disgraceful. And the amount of rubbish that's on the streets of this country is disgraceful. Birmingham's an extreme case. But trust me, you go to any city in this country and you will find loads and loads of rubbish everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, the scale of this in Birmingham is beyond anything that is acceptable. I mean, as Angela Rayner said, it's creating an appalling public health risk. But again, we just saw Angela Rayner saying, "I've had a couple of meetings." What good is that to the people of Birmingham?
I know.
What good is that? I mean, I saw some people, discussing this, and. I'm not entirely sure why this isn't being done. Some people are saying, well, why aren't we getting the army in to clear this stuff? Now, we always say, get the army in. And I know there are logistical issues, and God knows the army's stretched pretty tight as it is with everything else that's going on.
Well, they're supposed to be going to Ukraine to solve that problem, aren't they?
But as I said, if this is, as Angela Rayner said, and it's quite clearly a possible public health crisis, something has to be done about it. It has to be done now, not in a few weeks' time.
Right. Yeah, because I mean the weather's hot now. It's not going to get any cooler. It's going to get hotter. The public health problem is going to get worse. There were pictures last week of bin men running away from.
Been run by rats.
Giant rats who were coming after them. You're kind of going, this is ridiculous. You can't. As you say, imagine people coming to this country thinking, what's going on? You know, how the hell did it get this bad? Absolutely extraordinary. But let's go back to your favourite story, because I would feel as if I'd let you down if we didn't get your take on the tariff situation. You know, I've been having a sort of ongoing, you know, conversation with Julie Hartley-Brewer, who's, like you, very concerned about it, thinks that the world's going to end because of the Trump madness in America. Of course, it's not going to end. It's all going to settle down, and we're all going to be fine by the end of the day, or whatever the day is. You know what I mean? So tell me why you're worried about it.
Well, one of the reasons I'm worried about it is because we had the situation yesterday where a guy called, I think it's Bill Akers, I think that's the pronunciation, who's one of Donald Trump's, you know, biggest supporters in business, stood up and said, as a result of what Donald Trump is doing, we're now facing an economic nuclear winter. Now, I think that's pretty bad. So
that's his opinion, right?
Well, that's his opinion, but most of the economists have now raised the prospect of a global recession to as high as 50 or 60%. Now, if there's a global recession coming on top of
Goldman Sachs have said that as well. These are the same people who managed to get Greece into the European Union under false pretences and then made the country completely bankrupt.
I make no claim to be a great economic analyst. All I'm saying is all the economic analysts are basically saying this is very, very serious. And for the first time, we've seen people in the Republican Party in the United States actually start to criticise Donald Trump for this. We've got China basically talking about a trade war. Now, if there's a global trade war,
why are we listening to China, by the way? Sorry, and why are we suddenly siding with China here?
Well, I'm not siding with anyone.
If China says they're being bullied by the United States of America, I'm going good. Thankfully, finally, somebody's doing something about China, who bullied the rest of the country, the rest of the world, for the best part of the last 20 years.
Okay, well, fine, but if bullying China means that, as I said, we're going to have an economic nuclear winter, the impact on...
But we're not going to have an economic nuclear winter. All of these economists that say that these terrible things are going to happen, they all use the same word. And you know what that word is?
What is that word?
If.
Well, I mean,
if.
Obviously...
Two letters, I-F, if.
If we think that absolutely, well, I'm just making
I'm just going to go bing every time you say if.
If you think that raising massive tariffs, I think, what is it? We're talking about 105% tariffs. If we think that is going to be good for the global economy and global trade, fine. I'm pretty sure it's not.
No, I don't think that either. But let's just see what Ursula von der Leyen thinks about it. Have a look at what she said yesterday.
We stand ready to negotiate with the United States. Indeed, we have offered 0 for 0 tariffs for industrial goods, as we have successfully done with many other trading partners, because Europe is always ready for a good deal, so we keep it on the table. But we are also prepared to respond through countermeasures and defend our interests.
How about Benjamin Netanyahu, what he said?
First, if I can mention tariffs, it's a subject of some interest today. I can tell you that I said to the President a very simple thing. We will eliminate the trade deficit with the United States. We intend to do it very quickly. We think it's the right thing to do. And we're going to also eliminate trade barriers, a variety of trade barriers that have been put up unnecessarily. And I think Israel can serve as a model for many countries who ought to do the same.
So they don't seem to be too worried about it.
Well, let's see if that's what happens. Let's see if that's the solution. But if we go to a situation where there are 0 tariffs between the EU and the United States, fine. But what happens?
Well, that looks like where it's going.
But in that instance, what happens to what we were told was the whole purpose of this? See, when this started...
Well, the whole purpose of it was to get to 0 tariffs, because he was not in that situation. I said this to you last week, wait and see, right? Always wait and see with Donald Trump. You never know what he's going to do next.
Well, actually, the last time he told me to wait and see was to wait and see because Donald Trump was going to get this ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. And how's that one?
Well, wait and see.
Well, we are still waiting.
Yeah, I didn't say how long you had to wait and see. I just said wait and see.
Wait and see.
Well, wait and see.
Wait and
Sorry,
see if
did you want to put a limit? Did you want to put a limit on the wait and see? Like, wait and see for 24 hours? No, wait and see.
Well, Donald Trump said he'd get a ceasefire in 24 hours.
He did say that. He says a lot of things. Listen, I'm not going to defend everything that Donald Trump says, and you shouldn't attack everything that he says and look for ways to pick holes in it. What you should do is look at it on a global, reasonable level and go, look, if this turns out to be a good thing, then it's a good thing, isn't it?
No, I'm not attacking everything he's done. It's just I'm constantly being told he's the master of the deal. He's going to get a ceasefire.
Well, no, not from me, you're not. I don't say that.
He hasn't. And I'm also being told he's the master of the deal in relation to his tariff strategy. But the whole point about tariffs is last week we weren't being told, this is all sort of a master plan because Donald Trump wants zero tariffs. We were told this is all being a master plan because what Donald Trump wants to do is he wants to finally protect US manufacturing.
That is still his aim. That's true.
But it can't be both. His aim can't be zero tariffs as the European Union was.
I use this. Well, no, I use. Yeah, but it's all part of the same thing. It's not like these things are unrelated. I had this conversation yesterday with somebody about Apple. Apple, as a result of their fear that he would put tariffs on China, moved an awful lot of their iPhone production out of China into Vietnam and Cambodia, right? Now, that they thought was a very good strategy, but it turns out it wasn't good enough because he's now put tariffs on Cambodia and Vietnam. So now what they're thinking about doing is bringing back more production to the United States of America. And if that's the result of that, then more jobs for America, better things for the American economy, and less, offshoring of slave labour, basically, which for the world has got to be a good thing, hasn't it?
Okay. But Mike, that's completely different from the clip you just showed, which was Ursula von der Leyen talking about a mutual zero tariff regime.
Yeah.
And Netanyahu talking about a zero tariff regime. Now, it has to be one of two things.
But why can't they be both connected?
Why can't you both have tariffs and zero tariffs?
Well, no. Why can't you have an aim to try and get people to come back and manufacture goods that are sold in America, made in America, and why can't you also want zero tariffs from other countries around the world?
You can have that if you're Donald Trump, and that's what you want to do. But that means other countries have to do it in response. Unless you're saying what we should have is a situation where basically the rest of the world suffers a tariff regime, but the United States doesn't, and then we completely imbalance.
Well, that's in a funny sort of way. That's precisely what has been happening. Like I said, I use the example of American cars. If you try and buy an American car here, it's a lot more expensive than it is in America. If you try and buy a British car in America, it's a lot cheaper than it is here. And I know that for a fact because I've lived in both places.
The reason we don't buy American cars in this country isn't because of tariffs. The reason we don't buy expensive tariffs, the reason we don't buy them is American cars are crap.
Well, no, they're not. Have you not seen people driving? No, people drive. I saw 3 Ford Mustangs being driven around in London yesterday. People buy Ford Mustangs quite a lot. They buy Ford Mustangs. They like them. But my point is, Dan,
absolutely, my bit of South East London. You can't walk down.
But the point is that they would buy a lot more of them if they cost the same as they cost in America, but they don't because they get a tariff put on them, and that's what Trump is not happy about. I'm not saying that suddenly everybody should be driving Ford Mustangs, but you can either have tariff-free trade or not. And if it's going one way, and then why should it not go the other way? And surely the world would be a better place if there weren't tariffs?
Mike, I don't understand what you're saying. So you're saying you, as somebody who lives in Britain, supports a situation in which Donald Trump imposes a tariff regime that means we all in Britain buy more.
No, not at all. No, I've just said we shouldn't have any tariffs, and so therefore a Ford Mustang, which costs $30,000 to buy in America, should cost the same in Britain. Why should it cost twice as much?
Fine. And
and similarly, if you want to buy a Jaguar in this country, why should it be cheaper in America?
Fine. If that's what you want to do, that's fine. And if that's the strategy, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying that's different from the strategy we were being all told last week, which was Donald Trump did want tariffs so he could protect US manufacturing.
Well, yeah, but he also said that was all a negotiating position, and it was always a negotiating position.
Right, so fine. But what I'm saying
the trouble is you keep taking Donald Trump literally. You're cleverer than that, Dan. I mean, if somebody said to you, I'm going to punch your lights out at a bar, do you think they're going to punch your lights out, or do you think they're just threatening you to see what you do? Doesn't mean they're going to do it.
But Mike, we had the period where he was threatening to introduce tariffs.
Yeah.
That situation's now passed.
Yeah.
He's introduced tariffs.
Yes.
He has punched the world.
And he's also withdrawn those same tariffs on Canada and Mexico, and he will probably do the same thing with Britain. And more than likely, if the EU say we'll have zero tariffs, he'll probably take them off the EU as well. That's how he rolls.
He hasn't withdrawn them, he's just put them back. He's just put them back.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. He puts them back, he takes them off. You know, the guy is unpredictable.
Well, exactly. He's not just unpredictable. He's mad.
He's not mad. No.
Chaos.
He's doing, as he says, he's doing what 77 million people in America wanted, and that's what he's doing.
So what do they want?
He wants to rebuild America's economy. He wants to make it worthy for people to be able to look forward to getting jobs and to have jobs in the long term. What he doesn't want is for people to start manufacturing all of their goods in China every single chance they get. That's what he's trying to fix.
But maybe that's what he's trying to do. His biggest ally on Wall Street yesterday said his policies are going to create an economic nuclear winter. So I'm not.
Yeah, but that's
his friend. This is his friends. This is his own closest allies.
People are entitled to their opinions, as you are. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's an if, isn't it? And I bet you right now. I bet you right now, if you wish to describe to me what an economic nuclear winter is, we won't have it. And I'll bet you 100 quid right now to your favourite charity, and you'll be paying me in spades in September.
All right. I bet you.
Even before the winter comes.
I bet you that as a result of this, unless Trump backs down and removes the tariffs.
No. You don't get to do it unless. You tell me if you believe there's going to be a nuclear winter of economy. You tell me now. You think it's going to happen? You bet your bottom dollar on it.
There is definitely, as a result of these tariffs, going to be a global recession.
All right. So you're going to say there's going to be a global recession.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And when's that going to happen?
How long's?
Are you saying wait and see? You can't just go wait and see. So when the global recession comes in 5 years, you claim your money.
Within the year.
Within a year.
If these tariffs continue, we're going to get a global recession.
No, you can't do if. You can't. Beep. You can't do it. You've got to say it now. You think there's going to be a global recession. When are we going to be in it?
Yes, I think we're heading for a global recession.
But when are we going to be in it, though?
This year.
So this year, before the end of 2025?
There will be a global recession.
Okay. I'd say there's more chance of you getting a show on Talk between now and then.
What you at the beginning? No, I'm heading for one.
Exactly. Good to see you. Dan Hodges, thank you very much indeed. By the way, just to remind you, the FTSE 100's up. So there's no global recession here. Anyway, it's 8:29. Goodness me. And we've wasted a lot of time there. But that's partly because Dan Hodges can't make up his mind. He keeps saying if. Beep. This is Talk.
Against one of these players, Harriet Haynes, 18 months ago, And this player, Haynes, who was born male, has been cleaning up the prize money, and now there's another one, Lucy Smith, coming up close behind. So the organisers in pool know this is a problem. The problem they've got is they've been threatened by both sides. So they actually adopted a proper female category in the summer of 2023, and then this player, Harriet Haynes, who's male, threatened them with legal action.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here. Glyn says, morning, Mike. This strike by the bin men in Birmingham. My daughter lives in Birmingham, and there is not all that rubbish building up. You know why? Because they rally round and double bag and take stuff to the tip and help others that can't. Britain's pulling together. But in these parts of Birmingham, we are seeing on TV just dumping anything and anywhere. There is absolutely no pride. And this from Yvonne, who says, Mike, I was looking at a young unaccompanied refugee from Eritrea. She's very much part of our family now, about 5 years on. She's very hard-working, but informed me that in the Eritrean community, the girls are married in their Christian Orthodox church, but not married in British law. So when they have babies, they claim single parenthood with their husbands, just visiting for husband duties, and who presumably live somewhere else in Her Majesty's pleasure. More scamming of our benefit system. Well, I mean, obviously, that's why people come here. Absolutely ridiculous. Let's talk to our man in The Sun today on page 10, Ross Clark. He's got a piece about net zero. One by one, net zero targets are being ditched as they hit reality. So let's halt 2050 altogether. That would be nice. Ross, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I mean, I wish I could agree with you, but I'm sort of confused about the way that the government seems to be handling net zero. So on the one hand, you've got them saying, "Oh, we're going to push the getting rid of diesel and petrol cars to 2035 from 2030," which doesn't seem to make an awful lot of difference. But at the same time, they're talking about building a third runway at Heathrow, expanding Luton Airport, and then at the same time, they've got Ed Miliband banging on about getting rid of gas boilers and telling people to charge more for them, so they end up getting heat pumps. So what's true?
Yeah, well, whenever these targets collide with reality, they end up being relaxed, don't they? And you know, it's okay talking about 2050 beyond the lifetime of the political careers of the current generation of politicians. But of course, the target, when you've got a target that's actually come to take place within this Parliament, and the MPs then have to be re-elected after it's met, then it's a very different story. Now, what the government has done this week, on using the Trump's tariffs as an excuse, I notice, is to put the date for total abolition of petrol and diesel cars from 2030 back to 2035. And it just goes through what's happened in the past 8 years with this target. First it was going to be 2040, then it was going to be 2035. Boris's government decided that February 2020. 9 months later, they said, no, it's going to be 2030. Then in 2023, Rishi Sunak said, no, it's going to be 2035. Last year's Labour manifesto, no, it's going to be 2030. Right. And now they say it's going to be 2035. And you think, if you're a car manufacturer trying to plan ahead, it's completely and utterly ridiculous.
Exactly. And so presumably the car manufacturers had already kind of factored in that 2030 was the date by which they were supposed to stop making these cars. The fact that they've been now given a sort of 5-year reprieve doesn't really help them, does it?
No, it doesn't. I mean, it takes sort of several years to plan and produce a new model. So, no one's going to put a lot of money into developing a model that's going to have to be taken off the market in 2035 anyway. And there's also the change that's come in this week is the government's now saying that manufacturers who produce fewer than 2,500 vehicles a year will be exempt from the ban on petrol and diesel. Well, I mean, that's, Aston Martin, Rolls-Royce and so on. So, I mean, the government's basically saying, if you're rich enough for afford a gas guzzler, then you'll be able to carry on driving petrol diesel.
Right.
If you're a pleb who can only afford a family hatchback, on the other hand,
Or you're driving a van for a living or something.
That's not exactly climate justice, as what,
No. Well, this is the thing. In the same way that, the ULEZ charge is nothing to do with making the air cleaner. It's to do with you paying to pollute the air. That's exactly what they're doing. In the same way that, putting a tariff on the congestion charge basically means that you're paying to drive. They're not stopping you from driving. They just want you to pay money for the privilege of doing it. Let's have a look at what Keir Starmer said yesterday.
There's a global race on for the jobs of the future in relation to net zero. More investment is coming into this country in relation to renewables than any other sector. I don't think now is the time to step away from that race. Now is the time to double down on that race. Some country is going to win the race when it comes to renewables and the changes for net zero. I want Britain to be in that race, and I want us to win that race.
Isn't he being slightly disingenuous about this so-called inward investment? Because most of it is subsidised heavily by taxpayers' money.
Well, what he refers to as the race, I mean, well, there is a race going on. There's always a race going on for economic domination, but the government seems to slip from that to pretending there's a global race to hit near net zero carbon emissions. Right. Well, that's a one-horse race. Britain's in it, and, well, maybe other European countries as well, but China and the US aren't in that race. They're not interested. What they're interested in is, jobs, wealth, and so on. It's only us who are interested in economic sacrifice in order to reach this arbitrary target.
Right. Well, that's the trouble, isn't it? At the end of the day, the net zero mess, I suppose, for want of a better word, will bankrupt the economy faster than anything that Donald Trump can do. And one of the things, funnily enough, that Giorgia Meloni has said in the past 24 hours is that she wants to go to America and have a meeting with Trump because she's accusing the EU of having targets on net zero which are akin to bigger tariffs than Donald Trump wants to put on.
Yeah, and don't forget, Joe Biden also introduced very protectionist measures to create jobs in America, create the green jobs in America. He said, well, government will give you a grant to buy an electric car as long as it's made in the US.
Right.
The same with other green bling and stuff. Well, nobody seemed to, accuse him of sort of closing down world trade. But he was just as protectionist, really, as Donald Trump on this, just in a sort of slightly different way.
Well, generally speaking, most American presidents are, protectionist about their own economy. They tend to be, like most Americans, very kind of, shall we say, devil may care about the rest of the world. They don't really know much about it. They don't really care what goes on in the rest of the world. They're not really that interested, which is why most Americans now certainly don't want anything to do with Ukraine, certainly don't want anything to do with Afghanistan, and would rather not put any American troops at any sort of risk in any part of the world because they don't care about it.
No, yeah, but I mean, it's true that US presidents do tend to dabble with protectionism, all of them. But even so, until last week, the US had the lowest average import tariffs of any country in the world, apart from Hong Kong and Macau.
Yeah.
US had average tariffs about 3.5%, and Britain it's about sort of 4.5-5%, and in the EU is very similar to Britain. So, yeah, I mean, countries tend to. US presidents tend to threaten tariffs, but what has made America rich, of course, is actually the opposite. We're having very open trade, and if these tariffs were to persist, then it would be very different for the US.
Yeah, absolutely right. So, I mean, I suppose the $64,000 question, or perhaps the $64 billion question is, will the economy force Keir Starmer to start reversing more of these net zero policies, or will he try, as he says, to hang in there?
Well, the target really to look at next is the 2030 target for the complete decarbonisation of the national grid. Now, Now, the government's already sort of slightly watered this down. It was going to be 100% green energy in the electricity system by 2030. It's now subtly been reduced to 95% carbon-free energy. But almost everybody, apart from Ed Miliband and the people he actually pays to tell him it's possible, are telling him it's not possible. It's not just a case of building wind farms and solar farms. You've got to sort of provide the backup. You've got to reconfigure the national grid to carry the renewable energy, because at the moment we have a grid which is based on a sort of large or relatively small number of large coal-fired power stations in the Midlands. And, when you've got sort of wind farms in the north of Scotland, that's not the national grid that you really need. So, I mean, there'll be masses of work to achieve a zero carbon electricity grid, and fantastic expense, which of course will be passed on to consumers. And my bet is that target is not going to last this government, this parliament.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Ross Clark, who's got a big page 10 piece on The Sun today. One by one, net zero targets are being ditched as they hit reality. So let's halt 2050 altogether, is what he says. You can get that, of course, as soon as you open the paper. It's on page 10 every single day. They've always got a great columnist today. It's Ross Clark. Let's get a voice note from Lee.
Hiya, Mike. Lee from Rugby. Fantastic show as ever. I personally think that Trumpy has played an absolute blinder. You watch the countries queuing up to reduce their tariffs and he'll get it back to zero. That is what's called fair trade. And all these people that see their money disappearing, like the man you just had on, they're panicking. So I think he's played a blinder. And if it works, as I think it will, I think the Republicans are going to be in forever. Let's have some of that over here, eh? Can we borrow him for a bit? Anyway, carry on the good work, mate. Have a great day. Enjoy the sun.
Absolutely right. I mean, I spoke to a couple of financial advisors yesterday who said to me, look, the smart money stays in the market. The smart money buys at the low of the market. And the smart money, if you've got a reason to have a pension which is not going to be, cash-inable, if you like, for a few years, it's just you wait and see. What you don't do is you don't panic and you don't sell whatever it is you've got, and you don't try and cash out your pension. It's as simple as that. It's a straightforward economic transaction. Morning, Mike. I said, says Lynn in Essex, I'd like to know how much this womb transfer cost the NHS. As harsh as it sounds, this isn't a life-saving procedure. If the NHS wasn't turning patients down for cancer treatments because it's too expensive, I feel that this is wrong. Although my heart does go out to any woman who cannot conceive a baby. Yeah, no, I think everybody does. And every woman surely should have the right to have a child. But if she can't have a child, I'm afraid it's not for the rest of the country and the taxpayer to pay for her ability to do that. In my view, I don't think IVF is something that you should get on the NHS. I don't think anything like a womb transfer, transplant is anything you should get on the NHS. If you want to have it done because you desperately want to have a child, you can't adopt one for some reason, then by all means get the procedure done. But let's not have the NHS taken to task to do it. Simple as that. Susan says, why can Prince Harry fight the UK against the state protection with UK taxpayers' money when he is not a resident here either? Well, that's a very good question. And Maggie says, thank you for your Morning Glory car sticker. It will be on my car bumper this morning. Photo to follow. You do a great job. Thank you very much indeed, Maggie. And Kenny from Edinburgh says, would the organisers of women's snooker tournaments just accept it if Ronnie O'Sullivan decided he was now Bonnie O'Sullivan and entered women's events? I mean, to be honest, funnily enough, I would say that pool is one of those games that shouldn't necessarily be dominated by men. You would think that women could play pool just as well as men, but it does seem a bit weird, doesn't it, that we've got a tournament about women's pool, which is played in the final by two men. How does that work? 8:45.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:47. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock when Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here. Morning, Mike. Absolutely love your weekly debates with Dan Hodges. Never a dull moment, says JB. Mike says, Michael, I went to a Ford dealership yesterday. Looks at a Ford Mustang 5-litre V8, 72,000 or $799 a month. 4,000 in tax, but what put me off was the 12 mile per gallon economy. Yeah, I mean, they've got big engines, they're big, expensive cars, but they're a lot cheaper if you go and buy one in America, is all I'm saying. In the same way that loads of people buy cars in Germany and drive them over here because they're cheaper, right? But the point is that, you know, that's to do with tax, it's to do with tariffs, and if you are American and you want to sell cars here, then it would probably be a lot easier if they were the same price. If you're in Birmingham, of course, you couldn't drive the thing around because you'd be stymied every single street you went down because there's so much rubbish there. I'm delighted to say we've got Carly Canaroso right here, news editor of the Red Brick newspaper. She's very kindly offered to walk around the streets of Birmingham for us. Carly, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. Describe what you can see, if you can sort of show us what you can see. I'll ask you how it smells in a minute.
Yeah. It's not good over here. It is just piling up. This is right outside where I live.
Oh, we've got a bit
of and it did not look any better either. It's
right. And which part of Birmingham are you in right now?
Getting worse. I'm in Selly Oak.
Celio, okay. And so is that, would you say that is representative of every street, really? I mean, we heard yesterday there were piles of rubbish as much as sort of 12 feet deep. This looks like just a bunch of stuff which hasn't been collected for a while.
Yeah, it's just, like I said, just piling up over here. There definitely are places in Birmingham that have had it worse, but it's not looking to get any better. And yeah, people have just started piling it up next to their houses. Right.
I mean, we're told by some people in some parts of Birmingham that they're kind of taking their rubbish to a tip and they're picking up rubbish for people who can't take it to a tip. Is that true? Is there only some parts of Birmingham that are bad and other parts not so bad?
I haven't heard of anyone coming to pick anything up. Honestly, it's been the same for a couple weeks. Right. This is our recycling bin over here, and it's been full like that since maybe February, like beginning of February. So.
And in terms of the way that it smells, because the weather's quite warm at the moment, what can you tell us?
Oh, it's absolutely terrible. It just bakes, and it just gets so intense, especially when the weather's warm.
Right.
Yeah, it's overwhelming, really. Really
horrible. And we've heard about the rats. Have you seen any rats the size of cats at any point?
I have seen some rats. There have been probably the size, not the size of cats, but the size of my foot for sure.
Right.
They've been so big and just running around. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bit scary. And also, I mean, in London, we've got loads of foxes as well who would rip open any kind of, plastic bag full of rubbish. Have you seen any foxes up there as well?
Yeah, I've seen a few actually, and just digging around, and it's definitely scary having animals come into the mix, and the rats they're dying, and you don't know if they have disease, or it's just very unhygienic, really.
Yeah, it's really awful. And how long have you had to suffer it? I mean, has it been going on for weeks?
Yeah, weeks. Yeah, I would say since the beginning of February.
Right.
Yeah.
And where do you live in Selly Oak, or do you somewhere in another part of the city?
No, I'm a student. I live in Selly Oak.
Okay. And so what do you do with your rubbish? Because, I mean, presumably if you're in student housing, do you have, like, a huge bin that you put stuff in?
Yeah, no, we just have a regular bin. This is all our stuff at the minute. And it's just, like, piling up. We have it right outside our house as well. Like, right. We've just had to pile it up and, hope the rats don't come and get it.
Oh, God. And, do the rats come into the garden and stuff as well, looking for more?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
Wow. Goodness me. So, I mean, as far as we know, Angela Rayner has said to the City Council they have to do a deal, they have to somehow settle this with the Unite Union. But the Unite Union seem to be in no mood to do a settlement, as far as we know, and they're actually threatening that this might happen in other parts of the country. Oh, I think we've lost. Carly. She's frozen. Canarotto there. Maybe one of the rats has eaten through the cable. I don't know. They like to do that. Oh, she's back. Carly, is she back? Sorry.
I think so. I can hear you if you can hear me.
Oh, good. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's no end in sight here, is there?
No, I don't think so. You know, I think as students, we are trying to support the binmen and their strike as well, but obviously, you know, it's overwhelming for us. A lot of us don't have cars either,
right.
To be dropping off any rubbish anywhere else.
Right.
So it's just, you know, kind of at a standstill here.
Well, listen, I wish you luck. Try and stay away from the rats and the foxes and all the other vermin as best you can. Carly, thank you very much indeed. Carly Canarozzo, news editor at Red Brick newspaper there, a student in Birmingham. Let's go to the phones in a moment. Just heard, says Rob, Angela Rayner talking about Birmingham. Where is that? Birmingham, he says. Rob, I can see what you're saying there. One from Lee in Hampshire. He says, I'm a big fan of American cars. Mustangs, Dodge Challengers, Dodge Rams, Chevys, GMCs. Love the cars when I'm in the USA. Sorry, Dan, but you're wrong again. And Ford, says G, is American. Ford Transit is the biggest selling van of all time in Britain. So, you know, let's not pretend that people are not interested in American cars. And a lot of people would buy American cars if they were cheaper. For heaven's sake. This is, of course, Morning Glory. It's 8:54. We'll take some calls after this.
Do you know cars in the UK? 2019 we made just over 1.5 million. Last year, 800,000. That's only going one way, isn't it? It doesn't do me any favours. I don't like that, but that's the way it's going. However, exports of our luxury high-end cars are booming all over the world because guess what? People are getting rich in places like China, and just like everybody else in the last 100 years that's been rich, they want a Rolls-Royce or a Bentley, mate, and that's always going to be made in Britain.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:56. I'm Mike Graham. We're almost into the final hour of the show. The sun is up. It's going to be a lovely hot day, nice and warm. Hopefully the weather is going to warm up a little bit. It was still a little bit chilly in the wind yesterday. Another cunning plan, says Terry in Birmingham, by Starmer to create growth. We're all allowed to buy a roller or a Bentley. I wonder which one I should go for. What an absolute idiot he is. Absolutely right. And Laura says, great show, thanks. Talking of the 1970s, let's remember not only the bin strike, but the fire brigade strike, and also the energy issues resulting in the 3-day week. week, all of which this old codger remembers. Laura, I'm sure that's a very unkind way to refer to yourself. Let's talk to Stephen in Manchester, who wants to talk about Angela Rayner. Stephen, good morning.
See, I can do the Angela Rayner bit, because I'm Northern.
You can.
Angela Rayner.
Angela Rayner. Yeah, Tory scum. I mean, what is she doing?
Listen, I've done the maths on this. We were building 250,000 houses a year anyway. Unaffordable housing that no one can afford to buy, by the way.
Yeah.
Right? And so that 5 years, that's, 1.25 million or something like that. All they've got to do is build 250,000 houses.
Right.
And they're not even on target with that.
No. Because we haven't got anybody to build them. We haven't got enough brickies. We haven't got enough...
By the way, she's off to Ethiopia.
Ethiopia,
and I can do that because I'm Northern, so get lost, Angela. Ethiopia, right? Stability, Ethiopia, stability, right? And they're not even on target with that.
No. I still don't know why she went to Ethiopia. What did she go there for?
Ethiopia.
She went to have a look at the stock exchange there.
Well, by the way, Michael.
You know, do you think the stock exchange crashed in Ethiopia because of Donald Trump's tariffs?
When Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng on his famous flight back from America, I'm pretty sure the market stabilised within about 2 weeks.
Yeah, they did.
And that's when they crashed it.
Yeah, I know.
So,
I know.
Anyway, should we talk about animals?
Yeah, go on, quickly, because we've got about a minute. Go on.
Ethiopia, stability. Right. I've got 3 robins that live in the bush behind me.
Oh, yeah.
And I feed them. One of the neighbours going, you can't feed the birds. I'm going, well, I can't. So, you know, they're animals.
Yeah, why can't you? What's wrong with feeding the birds now?
Apparently I'm not allowed to. We've got a load of grey squirrels as well.
That's
cheeky
right.
little sods they are.
Yeah, they are cheeky. They'll come in the house.
They'll literally come up to my door, Mike, and take a hobnob off my hand and stuff like that.
Well, you've got to watch out for the rats, though. Don't put too much food out, because they'll actually get rats.
No, we've not. I've never seen a rat round here, but I do have a fox.
Yeah, down in Sussex, right? Got a bird feeder, saw a rat on it once, climbed up the tree, climbed all the way to the edge of it, climbed all the way down to get the food. They're unbelievable. Ethiopia. Anyway, listen, good to talk to you, Stephen. Thank you very much indeed. Not quite sure what that was about, but I certainly enjoyed it. It's coming up to 9 o'clock. The world isn't coming to an end. Trust me, it's going to be fine. In the next hour, we'll tell you why. This is Morning Glory.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. It's the best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips, in Leeds it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us carry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10p, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12.60. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 3 minutes past 9. I'm Mike Graham, the final hour of the show. We're here all the way through until 10 o'clock. 4 glorious hours of Morning Glory every single weekday morning. Julie Hartley-Brewer takes over at 10. We will bring you up to date with all of the things that have happened in the past 3 hours. Keir Starmer's just put out a tweet in which he says, I know how frustrating it is when you can't get a GP appointment, how fed up everyone is with the 8 a.m. scramble. By cutting red tape and investing in our NHS, we've recruited over 1,500 extra GPs since October. Are you sure? And then he goes, delivering more appointments and bringing back the family doctor. I'd love to hear from anyone who's suddenly been able to now get an appointment with a GP easier than you used to be able to do because he's appointed 1,500 extra GPs. I don't believe a word of it. Seriously? Are you telling me that you can now get an appointment with a GP? I'd love to hear it. Listen, I'm very happy to give credit where it's due. If you tell me that you've been able to get a GP's appointment this very week because of Keir Starmer adding 1,500 more GPs into the mix, then I'd be very, very happy to report that to the rest of the country and indeed the rest of the world. But I very, very much doubt that it is the case. 0344 499 1000. This morning we've been talking about a great many things, including the Sun's front page where Jack Grealish was slapped in the face by a Man United fan after the Manchester derby yesterday. He's going to be facing some charges by the looks of it. Donald Trump saying, don't panic, don't be a panican, he says, as some of the markets already seem to be recovering, and as more and more sensible people are coming around to my way of thinking, which is basically that, you know, tariffs are bad for business and it's not a good idea to put them on. And by threatening people with more tariffs, what Donald Trump has done has actually got people like Ursula von der Leyen from the European Union and Benjamin Netanyahu from Israel and the Japanese and the Vietnamese and the Cambodians and even the Filipinos, I think, have all said, you know what, we're just going to do away with tariffs altogether on American goods, and so hopefully we can not be tariffed when we go with our goods to America either. China is saying it's a bad idea. Well, in that case, I'm all in favour of it. China is saying, oh, we're being bullied by the Americans. Well, get stuffed. Get bloody used to it, President Xi. It's about time you stopped going around the world working out as if you are the king of the world, taking mineral rights out of Africa, taking mineral rights out of Asia, taking mineral rights out of the South Americans. You know, have a bit of your own medicine, matey. I'm sorry, if it's a Chinese takeaway you're after, you know, we're not giving it to you anymore. We've been giving it to you for too long, and if you're Apple and you want to make all of your machines and your phones and your iPads and your laptops in Southeast Asia with slave labour, well, maybe it's time to think again. And if you want to put the prices up, then nobody's going to buy the stuff. 0344 499 1000. Also, we learned this morning that Keir Starmer ignored calls to investigate Dan Norris. This was before he was accused, shall we say, of getting involved in child sex offences. He refused to look into whether or not he was being a bully. Also, we've got Tulip Sadiq's questions about a £600,000 flat. We've got the Muslim Brotherhood taking over all of our prisons as well. And also, we'll be talking about that Birmingham bin strike. Of course, this is Morning Glory. Let's get it on. Here's one from Kevin in Sheffield who says, good morning, Mike. I find it strange that the government at the time during COVID could create new rules and laws to prevent people's movement around the country and yet can't or won't intervene in the Birmingham bin strike. That's a very good point. And Joe says this, Mike, I live in North Birmingham and there is no rubbish in our street. We have wheelie bins which can take a few bags of rubbish, and our rubbish was collected yesterday. Before that, it was not collected. It was collected 2 weeks ago. The streets you are showing on TV are not typical of the whole of Birmingham, just the areas where residents don't give a toss about their surroundings, says Joe. Well, I'll tell you what, Joe, I mean, you may have a point, but Sellyoak, which is where we had that report from, where an awful lot of students live, there were wheelie bins in the streets, but clearly the wheelie bins were full, because people were having to put black bin bags down next to those wheelie bins in the hope that somebody was going to come and collect them. Maybe there's a reason why the bins are not being collected in some parts of the city, and maybe somebody in the city could help me with that. I live in Birmingham, and I've just seen a lady in that Sellyoak show you the build-up of rubbish. My street in Sutton Coldfield looks nothing like that. Although we pay a service that should make sure bins are collected, there is no excuse to let rubbish build up like that. Get down to the tip. Well, like the lady said who was talking to us earlier, Carla, she doesn't have a car. Lots of people don't have cars. How are you supposed to get to the tip if you don't have a car? A suggestion for a new TV show, says Pete from Wiltshire. This is off the story on the front pages this morning about the woman who had a transplanted womb. He says, I've got a new idea. How about changing wombs? Yeah, very good. I see what you did there. Let's talk to Andrew Bowie, MP, who's a former energy minister, of course. He's down in Westminster for us. We're going to talk to him about net zero, which, of course, is still a big thing for Keir Starmer. Andrew, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
Good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Keir Starmer's saying that he's going to relax the rules on net zero, but he's still chasing the dragon, as it were. He can't seem to quite free himself from it. But they seem a bit schizophrenic on it, the government currently, because on the one hand they want to expand airports. Luton Airport's going to be expanded. Heathrow, they want a third runway. Gatwick's going to get another runway as well. And yet they've shut down Grangemouth up in Scotland, which could have produced what might be described as, greener fuel for aviation for a start. But they've also at the same time decided not to explore any more oil fields in the North Sea. Which is it? Are they for net zero or are they not for net zero?
Well, unfortunately, Mike, they are still for net zero. And, you've hit the nail on the head. They talk about a just transition. You talk to workers at Grangemouth, you talk to any of the hundreds of thousands of people employed in the North Sea oil and gas industry, or steel workers up at Scunthorpe. There is nothing just about the transition from where we are now to a clean future by 2050. It is unachievable. It's making this country poorer. It's driving away investment, and it's now costing people jobs. So it's time for the government to look again at whether or not net zero by 2050 is in the national interest. I frankly believe it's not. I think it's time that they change course. But you're right. I mean, they're all at sea on this. I mean, expanding Luton, possible expansion at Heathrow, possible expansion at Gatwick, relaxing some of the rules on electric vehicle mandates. By no means all of them. If you're rich enough to be able to afford an Aston or a McLaren, then you don't need to comply with these new rules post 2030. But if you're not, you're going to be forced to buy a new EV. I mean, these are just absurd rules that the government are going along with right now, doing lip service to the challenges that individuals face out there in the country, and still sticking rigidly to this unachievable ambition of net zero by 2050.
Right. And is it right then that the Conservative Party under Kerry Badenoch has ditched net zero then? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, we ditched net zero by 2050 a couple of weeks ago. Kemi announced it, and now we're doing the hard yards of actually working out what that means for specific sectors, specific policies for how we generate energy moving forward. We're not going to be held by the arbitrary target of net zero by 2050 because it's driving away investment, costing jobs, and leading to the deindustrialisation of this country, Mike. We're seeing manufacturing leave this country in numbers unprecedented in our history, and that can't continue.
Also, given the current state of the tariff war that's going on around the world, what on earth is Ed Miliband thinking, buying in or ordering in, millions and millions of solar panels from China, which are produced, as far as we are aware, and as far as he even is aware, by slave labour?
Yeah. Well, he signed this energy cooperation pact, whatever you want to call it, with the People's Republic of China. He was there just a few short weeks ago because the fact is, Mike, we can't get to his ambition of clean power 2030 without relying on solar panels developed by slave labour in Xinjiang, or indeed by buying in vast wind turbines, which are manufactured at scale in China. So the whole thing's absurd. He talks about weaning us off reliance on petrostate dictators, but by making us more reliant on the Communist Party of China. It's an insane position for the government to find themselves in.
And what exactly is the government's position on tariffs? Because I can't work it out. Do you know what it is?
Well, I think, as far as I'm aware, because it's quite difficult to work out with this government where they are in a whole host of things, but I think on tariffs they're in a reasonably sensible position in that they don't want to get engaged in a tit-for-tat trade war. They're not going to impose tariffs on US imports into the UK, at least for the moment, and they're going to try and negotiate a better deal. But if their track record's anything to go by, I don't have very much confidence in their ability to do that.
No, I think that is a massive problem, isn't it? Let's talk a little bit about Keir Starmer, though, as well, because he's been accused of ignoring repeated calls to investigate a Labour MP, Dan Norris, accused of bullying and harassment. This was way before he got himself embroiled in some rather nasty allegations, which we're currently waiting to see what the result is of. Of course, he's innocent until proven guilty. He's not been charged with child sex offences, but he's being investigated for those offences. But apparently when he was still leader of the opposition. Keir Starmer was warned in writing that Dan Norris had been accused of bullying and harassment in June of last year, but he didn't do anything about it.
Well, look, I can't get drawn on the specifics of this case because there's a live investigation underway right now. But I think
but the bullying part of it is not part of that.
Track record. This is the. Yeah, granted, you're absolutely right, but I think this speaks to a wider situation with Keir Starmer, is that when faced with tough decisions, he runs away and doesn't take them. He hides away and is unable to actually make decisions. For example, he sat beside Jeremy Corbyn's side for the entire time that he was leader of the Labour Party when he was being accused of anti-Semitic hate speech, of supporting terrorists, of supporting Russia when they were engaged in a terrorist act in this country. Keir Starmer said absolutely nothing. So I think what we're hearing in the past few days just reinforces, in my mind anyway, the fact that this is a man, Keir Starmer, who can't be trusted to take the right decision, in fact can't be trusted to take any decision if that in any way involves making a tough decision.
And he doesn't seem to be in much control of some of his Labour backbenchers either. I mean, we saw at the weekend 2 Labour MPs being denied entry to Israel for a pretty shameful reason. It was basically that Israel judged them to be pretty much anti-Semitic and siding with certainly, if not Hamas, Palestine. We've now got another Labour MP, Tahir Ali, MP for Birmingham, Hall Green and Moseley, and we've just been looking at some terrible pictures of some rubbish building up in Birmingham. And this man, Tahir Ali, is apparently more interested in building an airport for his constituents in Pakistan.
Yeah, I know. Maybe if Labour MPs focused more on the situation in their constituencies and indeed the cities that they represent, it might be better for their constituents rather than focusing on issues in Pakistan or indeed the Middle East. I think the situation in Birmingham is absolutely appalling. If you were living in Labour-controlled Birmingham, you're seeing rubbish pile up, and there's one street which is on one side controlled by Labour, on the other side Bromsgrove controlled by Conservatives, and the difference couldn't be more stark. You've got rubbish under Labour and clean streets under the Conservatives, and that's the decision that people are going to have to make in the next few weeks, whether they want competent local delivery by good Conservative councillors or what we're seeing in Birmingham right now from Labour.
Yeah, well, indeed. And here's what Tahir Ali had to say in Parliament yesterday. He attacked those people who have been saying the things that you've been saying. Have a look.
On 28th of March, I shared on social media the work I and colleagues across the 2 houses have been doing to urge the government of Pakistan to build an international airport at Mirpur. This is an important issue for over 1 million British Kashmiris who overwhelmingly come from there and face delay and danger whilst travelling from Islamabad to Mirpur. The reactions to that post, including from some members of the House, have resulted in us being subject to Islamophobic, racist attacks and harassment. The members of Great Yarmouth, Harborough, Oadby and Wigston, the member for Uffrington, the member for Boston and Skegness, all of whom have been...
The honourable member should not be criticising other members for their social media posts in that way.
So here's a guy, right, who doesn't give a stuff about Birmingham and the rubbish that's building up in the streets, but does give a stuff about his constituents having a hard time getting to an airport, thousands and thousands of miles away. And even the Speaker, Deputy Speaker, they give him a hard time for attacking other members of Parliament, for criticising him.
Yeah. It's absurd, Mike. I mean, I've never heard that particular MP comment on issues pertaining to his constituency in Birmingham, as you say, all the issues they've got there. Even more ironically, I believe that he's also against expansion of Heathrow Airport in our own country. So whilst lobbying for an airport to be built in Pakistan, he doesn't want the expansion of an airport here in the UK. It's absolutely insane. It speaks to the Labour Party being all at sea on a host of different issues and abandoning the very people that elected them into this place in the first place.
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, I was going to ask you about Tulip Siddiq, the former City Minister who had to resign just after Christmas because of her connections to a corruption scandal in Bangladesh. I mean, have Labour got any MPs that have actually got any interest in Britain?
Well, that's a very good question. It doesn't seem like it, does it? And the ones that do focus on Britain seem to be taking the wrong decisions when it comes to what's in the national interest. So I think, look, this Labour Party have only been in government for the last 10 months, and already we've seen, as a result of the decisions on national insurance, or as a result of their employment rights bill, or as a result of their decisions on net zero or oil and gas in the North Sea, a complete neglect of what is in the national interest of this country at the expense of the ideology of those in charge of the Labour Party. And you're absolutely right, I focus on issues overseas far more than focusing on what the British people want to see them doing, which is working hard for them and resolving some of the issues people have in their everyday lives.
And she's now being accused of misleading Parliament over the ownership of a flat in her native Bangladesh, a £600,000 apartment in the capital, Dhaka. And I imagine you get quite a cosy little place for 600 grand in Dhaka, without wishing to in any way disparage that place.
Yes, not I would have any knowledge of that whatsoever.
I bet you get a better place than you get in Chelsea, that's for sure. Anyway, listen, Andrew, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Andrew Bowie, MP, former Energy Minister. Let's get a voice note from Darren on Net Zero.
Mike, Darren from Southport, great show as ever. Do you know what? Greta Thunberg told us about 6 or 7 years ago we had 5 years to save the planet. And do you know what? In about 20 or 30 years' time, when some of us probably won't be here, the world will be the same. We'll still have volcanoes erupting, we'll still have tsunamis and earthquakes and everything else going on. And the globalists on the left will go, well, it's not quite as bad as it would have been because we did this in Britain. Nobody else in the world did it. They're still riding their tut-tuts in India. Everybody has got to benefit because of Britain. Britain taking the lead. And do you know what? It'll still be the same and there'll be no accountability. Electric cars will make no difference. It's all about control. Have a lovely day, Mike.
Yeah, it is absolutely all about control. But luckily, we haven't just got two parties in this country. We haven't just got Conservatives. We haven't just got Labour. We've got the Lib Dems. Here's Ed Davey encouraging you to buy British.
There's this guy, he's called President Trump, and he's messing with our trade and he's hurting us. Liberal Democrats say, fight back, buy British. And so I'm here in the Highlands in Scotland and I'm saying, buy square sausage. I'm saying, buy Mrs Tilley's famous Scottish tablet. And wherever you are, just buy British. Don't let them get away with it.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Ed. Two absolute cholesterol stuffers there. Some lawn sausage, which is what they actually call it, not square sausage, and Tunnock's tablet. You know, I don't think you could probably... You couldn't get two more pieces of unhealthy food. I mean, listen, I'm not having a go at them. They're all very good. But what on earth is he doing promoting them? What an absolute plank. He was on Plank of the Week last week for jumping around on a hobby horse in Parliament on College Green in Westminster. And now he's up in Scotland waving around square sausage, as he calls it. Unbelievable, isn't it? Is this the calibre of politician that we've had to put up with? It's 20 minutes past 9, very nearly. We're going to talk to Ian Aitchison coming up, who knows a thing or two about prisons, because Robert Jenrick has come out with some incredible statistics in which he says the Muslim Brotherhood is basically running prison gangs all over Britain, and it's a dangerous place now to be sent if you're not a Muslim. We'll check this out. Coming next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 23 minutes past 9. I've got a story for you right now, which we wanted to do for a couple of days, but we've finally got Ian Aitchison on, the man we wanted, former prison governor, author of Screwed, Britain's Prison Crisis and How to Escape It. Ian, very good morning to you. The story that we want to talk to you about, of course, is what Robert Jenrick revealed, Shadow Justice Secretary, a couple of days ago on his own social media account. Britain's prisons are being overrun by Islamist gangs. Self-styled Muslim Brotherhood leaders control wings in many high-security prisons, and instead of isolating them, the system is protecting them, not the officers or the public. I was pretty shocked by that, to be honest.
Right. Were you? Good morning, Mike. I wasn't, unfortunately, but I probably spend too much time thinking about these subjects.
Yeah.
I mean, we do need special protection from people who want to kill us for ideas. And that is why we have high-security prisons in this country to contain terrorist prisoners, the vast majority of whom are Islamist extremists.
Yeah.
And what we've seen, and Robert Jenrick's comments kind of amplify a story in the Times earlier in the week where an eminent criminal defence barrister, Tony Wyatt, you may have heard of him, he went into HMP Franklin, which is one of our high-security prisons, holding lots of terrorist offenders, and was absolutely staggered by what he saw and what he was being told about the extent of the influence of Muslim gangs, many of which are ideologically dominated, and the lack of action that the authorities in the prisons were taking to contain the problem. And basically what I discovered in 2016, which was at a management level of this threat, and it's a national security threat, was a mixture of incompetence, appeasement, and basically fear. That was replicated in 2022 when the terror watchdog, the government's independent advisor on terrorism, Jonathan Hall, KC, went into prisons to look at terrorism, and he said, the situation hadn't improved. And now we have the latest, stuff that's coming out of these very closed, secretive places. You don't get much information from them. But it seems to be the situation is getting even worse.
Well, it really does seem like that, doesn't it? And how dangerous are these individuals, and how long are they in prison for? And with these bonds that they're forming inside of prisons, presumably when they do come out, they continue with whatever that structure is.
Well, those are really good questions. I mean, in total, we've only got about 230 people in prison convicted under terrorism legislation.
Yeah.
But they are in very close proximity to lots of highly violent and credulous, vulnerable young men, often coming into prison to serve very long prison sentences, searching for meaning, searching for security and power. So it's no surprise that they will cleave to gangs. And the dominant gangs inside our high security prisons holding our terrorists do seem to be gangs that have Islamist extremists within them, sometimes directing them. And this struggle for power and control inside prisons goes on all the time. I don't think we're winning it. And it's really important for two reasons. First of all, the most available targets for people who get radicalized by terrorists in prison are prison staff, the men and women that pull on a uniform and do an incredibly brave job looking after these people. And secondly, and it speaks to your point, if we have no control over the spread of Islamist ideology in prisons, we're going to get people who go in and serve sentences not relating to terrorism, who are converted and then go back out into society. Right. And represent a real risk to the public.
Absolutely. Because one of the things that Robert picks up on is he cites Levi Belfield, the killer of schoolgirl Millie Dowler, and other members of grooming gangs who have been kind of co-opted, if you like, by these brotherhood prayer groups and shielded by the people that enforce the kind of gang culture inside of prisons. So they're kind of expanding out even, if you like, beyond those who are there for terrorist activities.
Well, that's highly unusual, and certainly didn't happen in the past, because prisons, like every other institution or society, and there are many societies, have a hierarchy. And sex offenders or people who committed sexual violence against women, males who did, are definitely at the bottom of the pile. But what we're seeing now is evidence that if those people choose to convert and come under the protection of Islamist or Muslim gangs in prison, they're able to freely walk around the prison under that umbrella, and that's quite extraordinary. The other thing to just mention, Mike, if I may, is excuse me, if we're talking about numbers here, around 18.1% of people in prisons now declare themselves to be Muslim.
Right.
The community representation of Muslims, according to the census, is 6.5%.
Yeah.
So either we're getting a lot more people who are Muslim who are committing crime, and I don't actually believe that to be true, or we are seeing something unique and dangerous happening inside prisons, and that is that people are converting to Islam, at least temporarily, to join the biggest gang in the prison. The biggest gang in the prisons should be His Majesty's Prison and Probation Service, and quite self-evidently that's not the case.
And in days gone by, before this sort of Muslim incarceration, if you like, because I presume 20 years ago we didn't have anything like this number of Muslims in prisons, was there a gang culture, a similar gang culture with other groups of people?
Oh, absolutely there was. And, what we're seeing here also is a conflation, I guess, or some sort of arrangement being arrived at by the traditional organised crime gangs who, for example, run drugs coming into prison. We know that drugs are a really serious problem in prison. And the conflation of them with ideological gangs. So you've got that added dimension of seriousness. The problem with rampant, out-of-control drugs economy in prisons is you can't have rehabilitation. Well, if you add in Muslim gangs that are at least partially controlled by ideologues, hate preachers, who've got open access to radicalise others, you've got an extraordinarily toxic situation, which I simply don't believe is being taken seriously or is under any sort of control.
And what would you suggest is the way to dismantle these gangs, if there is one?
Well, in 2016, when I did my independent review of Islamist extremism in prisons and probation and youth justice, I recommended the creation of what I called separation units. And those units were specifically to be able to isolate the hate preachers, the highly subversive ideologues who are at risk of radicalising others and totally incapacitate them. And that recommendation was accepted. I think those units are vastly underutilised. In fact, I go further, and there's plenty of evidence to suggest the prison service never wanted this as a solution and almost set them up to fail. So those units are constantly under strength, and almost, that is used as an excuse to say, well, it's not working. I just don't think there is the will or the leadership or the attitude there to be able to go after, on the basis of intelligence, people who are poisoning the minds of vulnerable and highly dangerous individuals in our high security prisons and get them out of circulation. That probably needs some ministerial direction. Dominic Raab was the last person to say, we've got these units, why aren't we using them? I think Shabana Mahmood needs to take a leaf out of his book now and say, we've got to bear down on these people because they are creating time bombs, effectively. People who are radicalised and go out into society again after release, who are going to commit atrocious crimes.
And finally, do you think we should be building more prisons? Are you one of those? I think we should, but, you're the expert.
Oh, well, we are building more prisons. We're barely keeping pace with the amount of people we lock up. I'm one of these traditionalists. I think we absolutely should have prisons for people who are highly dangerous. We need to lock them up for a very long time, if necessary, to reduce that dangerousness and, if possible, to fit them for a release back into the community. And, with the time and space that cleared prisons would create, we'd be able to do a much better job. So we're stopping tomorrow's rapists, tomorrow's murderers, tomorrow's sexual violence, and so on. At the minute, we can't do that. Our prisons are full to bursting. What I would want to do is clear the prison landings of people, in the words of my good friend, Professor John Podmore, who are nuisances, and fill those places with people that we're scared of, and actually do some work with those people. So I think, we're heading for bust again in 6 or 8 months' time. We haven't been able to build ourselves out of this problem, and we're going to have to take some very tough decisions. I don't believe that emergency mass release, badly mishandled, of just anybody that fits a criteria that's designed to give 5 minutes headroom is a sensible and strategic way forward. We've got to imprison dangerous people, and we've got to have different solutions for others, including those who, for example, commit crimes that aren't violent as a result of drug addiction.
Great to talk to you, Ian. We must do it more often. Thank you very much indeed. Ian Aitchison there, absolute voice of common sense on prisons. It's so refreshing, isn't it, to hear somebody who says, yeah, we need to lock people up who are dangerous. We don't need to let them out. We don't need to give them an ankle bracelet and say wander about the community until you can beat somebody else up over the head with an iron bar. No, you go to prison. You stay in prison, and when you're in prison, you don't get to join a Muslim gang. Sorry. You know, Ian Aitchison there, former prison governor, author of Screwed. It's got a great book, by the way. You've got to read it. Britain's Prison Crisis and How to Escape It. A traditionalist. Thank goodness there's still people like him left. Let's get a voice... no, not a voice note. Let's get a call from Paul, who's in Birmingham, wants to tell me about his GP. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Mike. Good morning, mate. Great show. Listen to you every day.
Very kind.
Yeah, Paul from Birmingham.
How's the rat problem out there?
I'm not affected, mate. I live in a different authority. I'm just on the border. So,
OK, lucky old you. Excellent.
I am lucky, mate. Yes.
Yeah. But you also seem to have a decent doctor as well. So, I mean, you're obviously living in the part of Britain that we all want to move to.
Well, you know, Mike, if ever I ring my GP up, I can ring them up at 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and usually I get an appointment the same day, and they are called the Queslett Medical Centre in Great Bar, Birmingham.
OK. That sounds amazing, because most people say to me, if you don't get on by 8 o'clock, you can't get an appointment. If you get on at 8:05, they say that all the appointments are taken. And what's the secret?
Well, you know what, Mike? It's a funny thing. My original GP got rid of me because I lived too far away, and I was in the old 8 o'clock lottery for that.
Yes.
So it was a result being moved. But I just wanted to say as well, Mike, I recently had, I was diagnosed with a detached retina at my local optician.
Right.
They gave me a letter to go to the eye hospital, and they operated the next day, the NHS did. So it's not all bad news, Mike.
Right.
When you need them really badly, they're there for you.
Listen, you've told me the first bit of good news about the NHS I think I've heard all year. I mean, we're in April now. You're the first person that's had a bit of good news for me.
Well, the Midland Eye Centre, mate, is golden, mate. They've saved my sight. Next day surgery.
Brilliant.
No complaints.
Well, good to hear it. Very good to hear it, Paul. Thanks very much indeed. Paul in Birmingham says his GPs are spot on. I mean, I'm amazed by that story. And you shouldn't be amazed. I mean, every GP should work like that. But basically, I don't know anyone who's ever made a call to a GP at 11 o'clock in the morning and been able to get through and get an appointment. Extraordinary. One from Joe in Cornwall says, was Ed Davey's TikTok produced by the Fast Show team? Oh, by the way, the lawn sausage is produced in Scotland using EU and non-UK beef and pork, if you check the label. Well, thank you very much. One from Ollie, who says, from Wolverhampton, he says, the people of Birmingham should take all of their rubbish and dump it outside the council depot, and they'll soon get it moved. Love the show. And Claire from Worcestershire has got plenty to say as well. She says, why is this a parliamentary issue, an airport in Pakistan? This is entirely personal and self-interest. As an MP, this is not the place he or she should be allowed. The constituents in question are the minority. Why should it have airtime for this in Parliament? Why? Bloody why? It's outrageous, she says. My grandparents in their 90s worked all their lives, own their own home and have zero health care at home. They're fit and well and living in squalor with rubbish everywhere. What about the priorities of this MP? He's not representing his constituency, he's representing self-interest. Just disgusting, and you're right, the sheer calibre of MP is horrendous. Great show, Mike. Definitely raising the temperature of my blood this morning. I apologise for that, Claire. Well, maybe you can go and join in that doctor's surgery. Oh, breaking news. Somebody's managed to get themselves a doctor's appointment within the same day. Incredible stuff. He said, I can't remember where he said he was living. Let's get a voice note from JB.
Morning, Mike. All these things about cars and tariffs and what we will and won't be able to drive. There's a guy in our town who's got himself a pony and trap, and we see him every day trotting down the road at a leisurely pace. It's great to see the faces on the drivers behind him, but I think he's got it right. I think he's slowed the pace of life right down, and I think it's the way to go. Might be getting myself one soon.
Yeah, they'll come up with a way of taxing it, though, I'm sure. There'll be some congestion charge put on the pony and trap, but very good point. JB, thank you very much indeed. Morning, Mike. Great show this morning, says Alan from Peterborough. Although I'm depressed now just watching Ed Davey saying bye British at the same time as criticising President Trump for saying bye American. And then that Labour MP lobbying for a new airport in Pakistan and then chastising people of this country who disagree with him. It's just unbelievable. What has happened to this once great country when we have politicians of this very low calibre? And then he says, keep up the good work. Alan in Peterborough, thank you very much indeed. We've got much more to do. Coming up, we're going to be speaking to Edmund Greaves, editor at Mouthy Money, because talking about pony and trap riding, if you want to try and save some money with your car, he's going to give you some tips. This is Talk.
UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:39. Mike says, Tim in Southampton, unfortunately the damage of net zero has already been baked in. All of our coal-fired power stations have been demolished and our gas power stations as well. Absolutely right. And Jane says, Mike, in my younger days, I was part of my pub's pool team with all men and playing against an all-male team. I was the only one to win for my team. Great show. Well, this is the thing. I mean, this pool championship where they've got two men basically playing in the final of a women's pool tournament. I'm thinking to myself, well, why are the men any better than the women at pool? Because women can be perfectly good at pool. It's not a game of endurance. It's not a game of strength or anything like that. It's a game of skill, which many women are very much better at, I would have thought, than men. Morning, Mike. I think Prince Harry really misses the UK. Jumps on a plane whenever he can. He could zoom in, surely, says Margaret in Birmingham. Yeah, we've just seen him walking into court, right? Surrounded by about 6 protection officers. The only bloke in the world who goes to court to get protection officers while he's already got them. He literally arrives in a big Range Rover. He's got a guy walking in front of him. He's got 2 police officers walking behind him. He's got the protection officer who drives the car walking in with him as well. Basically 6 people walking into the Court of Appeal for his security case to get more security. I mean, you know, what's wrong with him? Meanwhile, we've got a bit of breaking news for you. Paul in Birmingham gets a GP appointment on the first day, on the same day. Yay! Can we not get a Starmer yay for that? It's an NHS miracle, and we've witnessed it right here. There you go. Well done, Sir Keith. Apparently Starmer's claiming credit for that. He must have known that Paul in Birmingham was going to ring in. And the other bit, of course, breaking news is about Prince Harry. Morning, Mike. Another cunning plan by Starmer coming up in Birmingham. Well, we'll see about that. And one of you has said, morning, great show as ever, says Stevie P from Devon, and thank you for my bumper sticker. My daughter is 23 and is sadly one of the 500 girls in the UK that was born without a womb. I think this is fantastic news. Congratulations to Mum Baby and the fantastic team who performed the operation. It is amazing. I mean, all of these scientific breakthroughs are amazing. The question really is whether or not it should be funded by the NHS, and whether or not we should be paying for other people's children. And that, I suppose, is a question that many of you will have a view on. Morning, Mike. I'm pretty sure the commentator that you had on, says Leon, about the womb transplant, said the person did pay privately for it and then gave birth to the baby by the NHS as anyone else would. So I don't think it did cost the taxpayer anything. Well, not entirely true. Because it did cost the taxpayer something, because all the people involved in it are working for the NHS, and so they had to give their time up to do that. And it was there was a foundation, I think, that raised some of the money for some of the research, but not for all of it. So it certainly, there was a cost to the NHS, and if it was decided that these were operations which would be made available on the NHS, I think you would find that that would cost the NHS quite a lot of money. And Paul in Fife says, they're saying trans women won't be getting the miracle womb transplant. How long will that stance last? Well, good question. Let's go now to Edmund Greaves, editor at Mouthy Money, because yesterday we found out that driving costs in this country are going through the roof. Not only are we getting more toll roads being put on, toll tunnels, particularly in London, not only are you finding that your road tax is going up, you're getting a luxury tax on your car as well. So the annual cost of driving could be going up by thousands and thousands of pounds if you have to actually do it for a living. So let's find out from Edmund what you can do to maybe ameliorate the way that you actually pay for driving your car. Edmund, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you doing?
Very well indeed. A lot of people are feeling very frustrated at the moment because, you know, they don't really know, with this big business of whether they're going to ban cars in 2030 or 2035, if they're petrol, if they're diesel, if they're hybrids, you know, the sort of government's going backwards and forwards. People don't really know what to do. I mean, if you're buying yourself a car, say, in the next year for a family, which you think you're going to hold on to for maybe 10 years, I mean, I mean, it's a difficult question, I know, but what would you suggest is the best car to buy?
So, my own personal experience on this is and the government won't like me saying something like this, and car manufacturers won't like me saying something like this, is, but don't buy a new car. New cars are, someone explained it to me, it's one of the biggest forms of wealth transfer we have in the free market economy, because you buy a new car and it loses 30% of its value within, you know, a year or 2 years. Right. The next person who buys that car is getting basically a great car at a massive discount. Right. So, you know, don't buy a new one if you really need to save the money.
Okay. And a second-hand car with what, couple of years, so, 3 years old?
From my my personal experience here is buy, buy a petrol car that's a few years old. Look for ones that have relatively low mileages on them. An older car is not necessarily going to be a worse car. And it could save you a lot of money. You have to make sure you look after them properly. Get it checked up regularly. Make sure you've got a good mechanic you have a good relationship with, who you trust is not going to overcharge you. Basic stuff like that.
Yeah. True. I mean, I've always thought as well, and I only because of my own experiences, that if you fancy the idea of like having a nice sort of German car or a nice foreign car, they can sometimes be quite expensive to maintain if you want to keep taking them to like the actual dealer who originally sold them, if you like. You know what I mean? Whereas you can't, if you've got a Mercedes or something and you take it to a Mercedes dealer, they will charge you an awful lot of money to keep it in trim and service it and all that.
Yeah, look, I mean, people treat cars like prestige items. You want to be seen in the latest flash new wheels, but there's a reason why people like Warren Buffett drive a sedan. They don't buy expensive cars because they're not an asset; they're a liability. You have to spend money maintaining it, keeping it going. The input cost of maintaining, particularly like you say, an expensive car that has to go to a specific dealer, etc. It can be ruinous for people who are not prepared for financial commitment like that. To buy, get something affordable, something that needs you to get you where you need to go, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Treat it like a tool in order to help you achieve things like doing your job or whatever it might be, not as something that you want to be seen in. Keeping up with the Joneses, that kind of thing. We can't afford it anymore. It's not worth the race.
Right. A lot of people lease their cars now as well, because I mean you now see a lot more sort of new cars around because people are not necessarily buying them; they're leasing them. Is that better?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's lots of different ways in which you can kind of obtain a car now. Leases, as you say, quite common, and then you have deals such as PCP or whatever it might be. There's lots of different avenues for it. You need to kind of do your sums on it, whether it's worth it. Something that leasing a car and PCP and stuff like that. The issue with those kind of deals, and they are a great way to access a car as long as you're happy to be within that kind of financial ecosystem and you're prepared to make the payments and you're sure that you won't lapse on making payments. With those kind of cars, you have to look after the car, because as soon as you get to the end of the deal and give it back, you can face penalties if you have bumps and scratches and that kind of thing. So if that's something that happens, because it's normal to scrape the car on the wall as you're parking it, whatever it might be, it's not unusual. You can face significant fines for that when returning the vehicle. Unfortunately.
Yeah. And what about insurance? Because a lot of people are asking me the question of whether it's actually cheaper to get insurance if you've got a dash cam, for example, or any other sort of tricks you can introduce, because insurance is going through the roof at the moment.
Yeah, so there is actually, there is actually a suggestion that car insurance premiums are coming down a little bit this year. Last year, things were really, really bad. I remember doing my premium last year and facing something like a £200 increase. But the good news is you speak to your insurer when it comes to renewal time and bargain with them. You can get the price down. I live in a 2-car household. My wife uses her car, one of our cars for work, and I use my car to take my son to daycare.
Yeah.
I bargained with and it's doing silly things like explaining to them where you park the car at night. So we have a garage at home. We have one car which is worth more than the other. We now park that in the garage because that means our insurance is a little bit cheaper, because obviously there's less risk parking in the garage than there is parking on the street.
Right.
There are small tweaks you can make and discuss with the insurer. If they don't budge, go and look on a comparison website to find a cheaper, see if you can find a cheaper renewal deal elsewhere. Come prepared for a discussion with your insurer, point out to them, oh, well, I saw this deal elsewhere for this price.
Yeah.
And if they can't match it, then leave. There's no point in being loyal to a company that isn't treating you, like a new customer.
Sure.
And that's a simple fact. And you can save money. There are ways to do it. You just have to be savvy. You've got to take the initiative. You've got to be proactive, and that'll help you come out ahead.
And what about things like breakdown cover? Because again, a lot of people now have bank accounts that have breakdown cover with them. If you have insurance, is it cheaper if you don't get breakdown cover, or how does that work?
Yeah, so breakdown cover, I mean, similar to insurance, you know, you've got to try and negotiate good deals with the companies. You can go to comparison websites and look for better deals. It's quite easy, I think, to overpay for those sorts of deals, and people tend to kind of sign up for one and then just forget about it and just let the premiums go up every year. Again, shop around every year when you get your renewal through. Make sure you're getting a good deal. You know, looking after your car is a really important part of breakdown cover as well, because, you know, if you're not having to call on breakdown cover help, you know, your premiums aren't going to go up necessarily. So again, you know, making sure that your car is regularly maintained is really, really important for not incurring higher costs down the line, basically.
Yeah. Absolutely. Edmund, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Edmund Greaves there, as Mouthy Money. There's just a few tips there. I know that there's plenty of other questions that you might have had for that particular segment, and we'll try and get them answered for you the next time we get him on, if you do have any. But it is getting more and more expensive to drive a car in this country, isn't it? What with the insurance going up, what with the road tax going up massively, what with the pothole damage that you might have to pay for as well. And we might do a bit more on that subject at some point over the course of the rest of the week. It's coming up to 10 minutes to 10. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here very shortly to tell us what's coming on her show. Coming up, we're going to give you a little bit more of what Dan Hodges had to say. He's got fears of a global recession. He's willing to bet that there's going to be one. Amazing.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. This, of course, is the one place to come for common sense. It's the home of common sense. Martin in Stroud says, morning, Mike. As a financial advisor for over 35 years, I can tell you that following any stock market crash in history, the FTSE 100 and most other world stock markets always recover to the same pre-crash level within 5 years of the event. And that is a fact. So like you said, just be patient. And that's very important. Patience is a virtue. Prince Harry has got plenty of patience. He's got nothing else to do. He's turned up in London again for yet another court case, charging the public purse. He's not looking great. He's got more bald spots than I've seen for a while. The bald spot seems to be getting bigger. And he's walking into court, as we've been watching, with about 6 protection officers. He's actually going to court to ask why he doesn't get protection. I'm not sure I can explain that, really, other than the fact that he's wasting our money, wasting his time, and even Meghan's probably going, why do you keep suing everyone? You know, you're never going to win. Just don't do it. Let's have a listen to Dan Hodges, though. He was here a little bit earlier on in the show, and he, of course, suffers from a great deal of Trump derangement syndrome, and he's warning that we're going to have a global recession if things work out badly.
Mike, we had the period where he was threatening to introduce tariffs.
Yeah.
That situation's now passed.
Yeah.
He's introduced tariffs.
Yes.
He has punched the world.
And he's also withdrawn those same tariffs on Canada and Mexico, and he will probably do the same thing with Britain. And more than likely, if the EU say we'll have zero tariffs, he'll probably take them off the EU as well. That's how he rolls.
He hasn't withdrawn, he's just put them back. He's just put them back.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. He puts them back, he takes them off. You know, the guy is unpredictable.
Well, exactly. He's not just unpredictable. He's mad. He's
mad. He's not mad. No.
Chaos.
He's doing, as he says, he's doing what 77 million people in America wanted, and that's what he's doing. He's
so what do they want?
He wants to rebuild America's economy. He wants to make it worthy for people to be able to look forward to getting jobs and to have jobs in the long term. What he doesn't want is for people to start manufacturing all of their goods in China every single chance they get. That's what he's trying to fix.
But maybe that's what he's trying to do. His biggest ally on Wall Street yesterday said his policies are going to create an economic nuclear winter. So I'm not.
Yeah, but that's
his friend. This is his friends. This is his own closest allies.
But people are entitled to their opinions, as you are. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's an if, isn't it? And I bet you right now. Well, yeah. I bet you right now, if you wish to describe to me what an economic nuclear winter is, we won't have it. And I'll bet you 100 quid right now to your favourite charity, and you'll be paying me in spades in September.
All right. I bet you.
Even before the winter comes.
I bet you that as a result of this, unless Trump backs down, and removes the tariffs.
No. You don't get to do it unless. You tell me if you believe there's going to be a nuclear winter of economy. You tell me now. You think it's going to happen? You bet your bottom dollar on it.
There is definitely, as a result of these tariffs, going to be a global recession.
All right. So you're going to say there's going to be a global recession.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And when's that going to happen?
How long's?
Are you saying wait and see? You can't just go wait and see. So when the global recession comes in 5 years, you claim your money.
Within the year.
Within a year.
If these tariffs continue, we're going to get a global recession.
No, you can't do if. You can't. Beep. You can't do it. You've got to say it now. You think there's going to be a global recession. When are we going to be in it?
Yes, I think we're heading for a global recession.
But when are we going to be in it, though?
This year.
So this year, before the end of 2025?
There will be a global recession.
Okay. There you go. Global recession before the end of the year, says Dan Hodges. This message timed at 9:57 and 37 seconds. Will be coming after him for his £100, very possibly. Morning, Mike, says Monica. Last week I was passing my GP surgery and called in to make an appointment. It was 2:20 and the receptionist said we've got a cancellation for 2:30. I waited and got seen. Another miracle. More breaking news on the doctors' front, and the Labour government are claiming they've got 1,500 more doctors. I don't know where they've got them from. I'm not sure I believe them. But anyway, we shall see. Julie Hartley-Brewer's here.
Good morning. Well, where they got them from is the fact there's loads of people qualified as doctors, but then they're unemployed. Right. They're qualified as GPs after years of training, and we weren't employing them, even though we've got a shortage of GPs, which shows just how mad things are.
Exactly.
Wes Streeting is one of the few sort of lights of hope in the Labour
he is up to a point, but
unfortunately,
just because of this government and the way it operates, I just don't always believe what they say.
I don't believe anything any government says anymore.
They tend to massage the thing, don't they? Don't they massage the thing? I mean, where have they found 1,500 of these people?
No, there are loads. We've got. This is the stupid thing. We've got loads of qualified people who are not employed, even though we've got a shortage.
It's mad, isn't it?
It's NHS management.
Yeah.
And of course GPs are self-employed. And it's all.
But they only just did a new settlement with them, didn't they? Because up until I think about Christmas time, they were still waiting and they were still sort of working to rule.
Who knows? I mean, I don't know. I thought we just usually just paid them more to do less work. I thought that was the deal.
Yeah.
I thought it was just how it was.
I know.
No?
Probably. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've had a couple of people today saying they've actually had good experiences with their doctor recently.